And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, him.
Attention to roll call.
That's right. Good morning, everybody. 8:05 live Eastern Time. Of course, it's Monday morning. Marlon's out today. He banged in, took the day off. So it's me and John holding it down today. Marlon, enjoy your day, brother. With that being said, I think this is an important topic. So NYPD cops, are they being targeted for clicks in New York City? And so it's an important topic where I think not enough people are actually speaking about this publicly, or at least those that actually care what happens with the cops. So is there a directive within the NYPD on how to handle these encounters? And if there is, I haven't heard about it publicly. And if there is, I haven't heard about it from any cops. I retired September 2022, and up till then, there was no directive, and I don't hear of a directive now, and it's only getting worse with these encounters. And so for years, I think cops have expected, we got on the job in 2004, and even then we started to get comfortable with being recorded. We expected it. It's part of modern policing. But do cops expect being targeted for clickbait? And here's the reality. Every time a cop is targeted for social media clicks, these things can go viral within minutes. So cops are unaware or unsure, uncertain how to handle these encounters when they may be just meant for viral clicks. And so the reality is, where are we moving forward with this? It's not just about being recorded. And cops right now, because of the 50A, which means their records are public, it's easy to single out a cop because their disciplinary records, their information is at someone's fingertips. So this is a discussion that needs to be had. I haven't heard anything about it publicly. Waiting to hear something. The NYPD need a directive now, because to sanctify and protect the dignity of cops and also protect their own safety. Because how does this information get used on the street and online? So John, what are your thoughts, brother? Good morning.
Yeah, what's up, brother? Thanks everybody for joining us this morning. Just a reminder for those of you and on any other platforms other than YouTube or X, we don't really see your comments. I think we see LinkedIn, I think we see Facebook, but if you're on Instagram, we definitely don't see you. So if you want, come over to YouTube at The Finest Unfiltered. We appreciate you. Thanks everybody for jumping in this morning. Yeah, I mean, look, it's a conversation that's kind of being had. You got Detectives Endowment Association President Scott Monroe. He put together this coalition. They're trying to put legislation forward that really, I'll go into the legislation later, but it's I'll tell you right now, like when you hear it, you're going to be like, this has absolutely nothing to do with officers being harassed and targeted for social media. Even if the legislation passes, it will do literally zero to stop this new trend from happening. We spoke about this before, but it continues to increase. New video just came out, and I mean, look, I could go through social media, and there's about 10 videos a day of this. This isn't like new video came out, kind of went viral. I commented on it. I did a video on it. Went a little bit more viral after that. And I think it's infuriating to watch. It's infuriating to watch cops literally get abused. And it seems to be the younger generation of cops that they get abused. And it's bigger than them just, oh, they got made fun of. You need thick skin. You need alligator skin. It's First Amendment. There is a barrier between First Amendment and breaking the law. And there is no legislation that needs to happen at all, because we have all those laws in place currently. And I think when I see cops standing on a foot post, I don't think that they're not doing anything. When I see a guy, whatever, maybe he's sitting by himself and he's got a traffic gun, he's not doing anything. When you see a guy by himself and he's flying a drone up in the air, he's not doing anything. And what we've allowed is a society where basically anything goes now, and you could do whatever you want to a cop, including harass them, including get within their zone of safety and attempt to intimidate them, which is all a crime. And I don't understand why this phenomenon's been allowed to grow over the last 5 years, and why the NYPD has done nothing to address it, and why the NYPD unions are saying absolutely nothing about this. The First Amendment people are all going to say, oh, it's the First Amendment. You could record cops. You absolutely could record cops from a safe distance. I could say whatever I want to cops. You absolutely can. from a safe distance. It is a totally different situation when you are acting violent and tumultuous in someone's space, sticking a camera in their face, harassing them, keeping them from doing their job. If you did that to literally anybody else and a cop observed you, they would lock you up. So why are we not doing it when it's being done to them?
Yeah, I think discussion has to be had about provocation when it comes to the NYPD. What I mean by that is, so to me, there is a difference, and I think we should all talk about this right here. Ask ourselves, is there a difference? Is there a difference between someone recording cops for accountability or to potentially seek for potential misconduct, right? If there's an encounter between a cop and someone else and if they're involved in a confrontation, whether it's verbal or physical, if people want to record it, of course, it's their right. If they want to record that for accountability purposes, or if they want to turn it over to the Civilian Complaint Review Board, that's their right. But when they're having these one-on-one or when there's several people engaged as agitators with several cops in these close encounters for provocation, just for content, that's a complete different discussion. And I don't think the NYPD has a directive yet, because if there was, I'm sure, John, we would have seen the literature by it. It would have been spoken about. We would have heard about it from cops with boots on the ground. And I haven't had a single word about it. And I think that there's a big distinction between that. There's people recording for misconduct or potential misconduct or for their own accountability purposes from a safe distance, right? Because the reality is there was a time when people would record us and we'd say, hey, you want to record us? No problem. But step back and give us some room. And there is a sense of, there is, to me, not only a safety zone, but a comfort zone. I mean, people often talk about safety, right? But why don't we talk about the reality is comfort? I mean, if you were doing any job, if you're a doctor or you're a dentist, I'm sure they wouldn't like if someone was just standing over on their shoulder all day, watching every move they make. There is a comfort zone. And you know, every cop's experienced this. If you've ever been involved in a physical confrontation, arresting a perpetrator, especially in New York City, I've been involved that you're on the ground rolling around with someone, and there's some idiot who's standing over you with their phone almost in your face while you're fighting with someone. Now, yes, that's a safety risk, but there's also a comfort zone, or you're working and someone's standing over your shoulder. I think I'm sure, you know, if someone's a plumber and they go to someone's house to fix a sink or a toilet, I'm sure they would like if their customer was just standing over their shoulder the entire time. So I don't think we often talk about this. People don't expect cops to be human and have not only just a safety zone, but a comfort zone. And I think that's something important to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I mean, and like, you know, people are all like, oh, the DA's not going to prosecute, so they can't do nothing. And I'm like, well, if cops can't keep themselves safe, how could they keep you safe? If they can't keep themselves free from harassment, why do you think you'll be subject to be free from harassment? You know, I remember Brooklyn like years back when this whole thing first started. De Blasio just became the mayor and NYPD became the target for literally everybody. And we were writing drinking summonses to kids that were causing a mess in the park, like literally every night. Every night they would go in this park, drink, trash the park, neighborhood complained. We go in the park. We're like, look, that's it. You guys are getting summonses. We warned you before. You're getting summonses. We're giving C summonses. They actually weren't bad. They were like, no, we understand. We'll clean up from now on, blah, 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 blah. We're writing them summonses. Here comes Joe Blow from out of nowhere, not even talking to him, not even dealing with him, walks in the park after dark, starts recording us on his phone and getting violent and tumultuous with us. And I'm like, look, dude, do me a favor. Get out of here. Get out of here or you're going to have a problem. You're in the park after dark. You're keeping me from doing my job, which is issuing them a summons. And it was all oh, you guys are this, you guys are that. Blah, 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 all the name calling, but violent and tumultuous in our zone of safety. It was simple. I placed him in handcuffs. I was like, you're under arrest. We put him in handcuffs. He immediately starts crying. He's like, take my phone. You could erase the video. I was like, no. I'm vouchering your phone. Like, yeah, I want to keep that video because I want the judge to see it. Like, there's your proof of what we did. You know, we were doing such a horrible job. And anyway, long story short, he calms his ass down. I don't charge him with OGA. I bring him back to the precinct in the cell. He sits there for a little while. We give him a summons for park after dark, and he goes about his business. I see that guy for like a year after that every day. Do you know what he does? He doesn't come up to us anymore. pull out his video on his phone. He's like, "How you doing, officers? How you doing, officers?" And what would have happened if we didn't do that? Every interaction we would have had, this guy would have been out there on his phone, impeding us when we're doing our job, making our job less safe, and it would have led to a lot of unnecessary garbage for no reason. And there's things that can't be allowed, and this is clearly one of those. We'll play the video in a minute after Eric goes, but this isn't sustainable. Like, you don't understand. Like, as time goes on, like these social media influencers are growing like by the dozens a week, where they're just going out and they're filming NYPD cops for content, right? And they put it on their social media for likes, for clicks, however you want to call it, and they're getting paid as a result of it. And this has basically become a new industry. You know, it's ridiculous.
It's beyond ridiculous, and it's scary for the cops also, because we understand how serious the nature of police work is. And sometimes, unfortunately, I think this new era of policing is the entire culture. And I think that young cops that take this job right now are not, most of them are not really embedded into law enforcement, right? When we got on the job, there was a deity, right? There was a deity of families. You know, someone came on the job, their father was a cop, their father was a cop, their uncle was a cop, or people that just wanted to be a cop and not really concerned with how much money you can make. Where now, I think a lot of the cops that are coming out of the police academy now are young cops. They're not necessarily guys that really wanted to be cops. They're not even New York City kids. Just a job opportunity. Maybe there was nothing else. I don't know. I just don't see people that just want to be cops. And so this is an important conversation. So do you think, and this is, you know, not just you, John, but you know, our friends and listeners, do you think that young rookie cops, and I think that really is the theme, right? We don't typically see this with veteran cops, and there's not that many veteran cops out there. And I think that people that do this, that look for the viral content, they're kind of like dogs. Like, they sniff around. They know which cops to do it to. They know, John, they're not doing it to you. They're not doing it to me. A lot of our friends and listeners, you know, some old timers that policed during the 70s and 80s, they sure as hell ain't doing it to them. So they know who to do it to, and they sense it, right? It's just, you know, they sense it. They're like dogs. They feel it out. And most of the time, it's young rookie police officers that just don't look like they have that umph in them. They're not outliers. They look like they're doormats. Let's be honest. And they pick the right people. And so the reality is, does the NYPD need specialized training? Do these cops need training to identify what's the difference between an encounter where someone's trying to record you because maybe they're going to turn over the civilian complaint review board, or what's the difference between someone wants to record you and have an encounter to try to get an interaction, to try to get a reaction out of the cop so that video goes viral? And so there is a distinction. But do cops, you know, this is something like, should cops know the difference, or do they need to be trained? And if so, what type of training should involve? Should there be a tactics involved in how to handle these situations? And I think that this discussion needs to go on. And if the NYPD doesn't have a directive yet, it's a little late, but it's better late than never.
So look, you know, I always talk about DEI. I talk about lower standards and hiring. You know, we talk about all the things of that they target the exact wrong people. But I think when you look at this, it's a lot bigger than just the hiring, right? Because, like, let's face it, I remember myself as a rookie. I didn't know shit, bro. I didn't know the laws. I didn't know anything. Like, I felt like the academy really did a piss poor job at training me how to actually handle myself out in the street and what I should enforce and how to enforce it. And all of that came in my first few weeks doing Impact, right? Like, all of that, like how to arrest somebody, why to arrest somebody, how to interact with people, how to show a presence, how to show an authority. And so the reason that was happened is because there were senior cops there that trained us, all of us, in a masculine presence, in a masculine stance, in an authoritative stance. That authoritative stance is gone now. So, like, and what I'm saying is, like, when we came on, yeah, the standards were much better. Were they unbelievable? Was it like being a Navy SEAL? No, absolutely not. But the standards were higher. Standards were much higher. You know, it was a lot harder to get on the job. There was a lot more people that wanted to be cops when we came on the job. So it was a different time. But what's significantly different is the stance of the NYPD and how the public perceived the NYPD and the omnipresence of the NYPD. Like I could go down the list of soft kids that I worked with that had no business being cops. Some of them are chiefs today, some of them inspectors today, and you could go up the whole rank. And I'll still say till today, I would be like, if I was hiring for a police department, I wouldn't hire that guy. I'd be like, yeah, not that guy. No. And they survived and they did fine. And this didn't happen to them, not because of their demeanor, not because of their posture, but because the way the public perceived the NYPD as a whole. And so now you're seeing kids that it's the opposite. They carry themselves differently, and you still see some of them being targeted. Those interactions go a lot smoother and there's a lot less content there for these guys, and you don't see them get abused, but you still see people try it. Where in the past, you would never see this because people know there would be a consequence. You'd be put in handcuffs, you'd get a summons, you'd get arrested. You might even spend the weekend in jail, depending if it rises up to a OGA, obstructing governmental administration, which is a legitimate concern when we talk about this, and we'll go through that law. But I think overall, I think the bigger thing here is how the public perceives the NYPD. They perceive them as weak, timid, and docile because they are exactly that, weak, timid, and docile. They're not going to do anything.
Yeah, spot on, brother. I agree 100%. It was the phenomenon. It was also the stigma and the vision of what people thought of as the NYPD, right? The NYPD had this almost like this mystique, like the NYPD is the goat of policing, right? Don't mess with the NYPD, right? Because also we had support, we had leadership. So I often hear about cops, and a lot of our friends and listeners, and some of them are retired right now, and I'm not trying to insult you, but this is the reality. I heard cops say numerous times, "Oh, I stopped 10 people before by myself." Cops now couldn't do it. You didn't stop 10 people back then by yourself because you were so tough. Let's be honest. I consider myself a tough person. Same thing for you, John, but I'm not stopping 10 people. There was a time where you could, but it wasn't because they're so terrified of Eric Dim or John McCarry. It's because the NYPD as a whole was a strong entity. And people knew, well, if I mess with this one cop, there's 100 coming. And no matter what, if they don't get me today, they're going to get me. And what I mean by get, not they're going to beat your ass, but they're going to get you. You're going to end up in handcuffs. They're going to get you. And they're not going to stand for it. And so that's why I often say the weak links of the NYPD, we always had weak links, it's the reality, were able to survive because it was such a strong culture. And we had support and leadership. And the stigma was that, don't mess with the NYPD. And now a lot more people that have those weak links are being exposed because they don't have that apparatus. They don't have that stigma to it. And so when people tell me, I used to stop 20 people by myself or just me and my partner, it wasn't because of you. It was because of the NYPD as a whole and the way that people fear the NYPD, and they were timid by it in comparison till now. John, I'm sure you probably agree on that.
Yeah, no, absolutely, dude. I could go down the list of guys, dude. I could go down the list of dudes, and like I specifically remember working with like an Asian kid who was like 4'9", like 80 pounds, like with his gun belt on. And I remember like the sergeant was mad at me for whatever reason. It was nonsense, but I'm not even gonna get into it. But I remember the sergeant being mad at me. So he sends me down to the ferry and I'm like, look, I got no problem. You can put me wherever you want. You can put me on any foot post you want. But why do I got to be with this kid? I'd rather be by myself.
John, why is someone always mad at you?
I don't know. But I was like, why do I got to be with him? Like, why can't you just take his gun? Like, it's like a danger to me. I have to worry about getting shot with his gun. Like, he can't defend himself. So they would stick me on Jersey Street with him. And then it was like funny. Everywhere I was, everybody would come by and make fun. He'd be like, Makati, protect me. Makati, protect me. And I'm like, dude, this is like, and then, he was a nice guy. He wasn't a bad guy, but he was an awful cop. I mean, like he's still on the job. He was horrible, He was awful cop.
He's still there, hello.
Yeah, like Makati, protect me, Makati. And I'm like, what the hell is going on here? Like, and they would stick me on the ferryway. And like the ferry, I'm like, you got a half-hour ride out to the city, bro. You got a half-hour ride back. Some shit happens there. It's just you and him. I'm like, I'm gonna have to secure his firearm real quick. Like, so like that was always like, so like what my point is, like the hiring wasn't always perfect. You always got soft, timid, docile cops there. But overall, everything was different. Like there were plenty, and it was dumb, and I don't recommend anyone doing this now, by the way. But it was dumb. But like when I was a sergeant, there were plenty of days when I had patrol that I drove myself. Plenty of days. And I did it, and I was like, of course, I was young, dumb, and I full of Teflon, right? And I thought, nobody could do anything to me. But it was a different time, man. Like, there was a period of time pre de Blasio where you were respected. There was that fear factor there because they knew there would be consequences for action, and people were much, much nicer to you and much more understanding of you and looked out for you more than today. People live in fear today. They live in fear, not of the police, and so like, and then I remember specifically de Blasio coming in, and then like the whole vibe of New York City changing, and it completely changing whenever you're out there in plain clothes, whenever you're out there in uniform. And then it was like all of a sudden you were the bad guy, dude. And I'm like, it was right around the Michael Brown incident too. Like that started a lot of crap. That started a lot of garbage. But it was specifically de Blasio. I felt that entire vibe change. But even with that, there was a line that people just wouldn't cross. They would not get in your face. If you told someone, get back, and that's the thing. It's real simple. Like somebody's in your face, get back. Get back. You're impeding me from doing my job. You're in my zone of safety. If you don't, I'm going to place you under arrest. That is a lawful order. And I've never hear that at all with any of these people. I saw it recently with that kid Trust Mula. He approaches two CRT guys that are on a car stop. Now, this guy Mula, he comes up right on them, doesn't, they're doing a car stop. Comes, you got anything positive to say to the kids? And the kid, like, he's like, what are you rushing up on me like that for? Get back. And Mula gets back, and then he curses them out, you effing pigs, this, that, the other thing. But I'm like, that's how you handle that situation. Like somebody shouldn't feel like okay to like, you want to do something positive for the kids? Yeah. Do something positive for the kids when I'm not worried about getting shot in my face. You know what I mean? Do something positive for the kids then. Like nobody should feel like they could rush up to you with a camera in your face. And I'm remember being trained. If someone rushes up to you and pulls a camera out on you, smack it out of the hand. Because you don't know that can't be a gun. And I've seen guns that resemble phones. I've seen guns that resemble wallets. I've gotten them on search warrants. We've gotten them on the street. So I'm not taking a chance of you ripping something in my face and it's a gun. And today, I feel like if the cops did that, they would get arrested, dude. I feel like they would get prosecuted for that. And I think they understand that. But that doesn't alleviate the fact that you need to give verbal warnings. You need to set a boundary. Like, don't get in my face. Don't get in my face. Like, don't approach me when I'm on a car stop. Don't approach me when we have somebody else stop. Don't come in here. Like, this is where I'm working. Don't impede my safety. Don't impede your safety. If you do, there's going to be a consequence for that action. And today that boundary is lost. It's not there. And people in here, I see them saying that the DAs always sucked. Always. And I will capitalize that, every single letter in that. The district attorneys of New York always sucked. They always put bad guys first, or they were so overwhelmed that they didn't give a shit and so understaffed and so overworked. They were just looking to get rid of everything and they didn't care the long-term consequences. So always sucked. Doesn't alleviate you from having to do your job.
So, I think that every generation of cops, or every decade, however you want to slice it up, has challenging issues in comparison to their generations before them or after them. But I think now we're at the tipping point. I mean, so if you look at like the early 50s and 60s, the cops are out there very self-reliant, right? They didn't really have vests. They didn't have radios. They're very self-reliant. Then you go into like the 70s, 80s, just crime was out of control. The cops in the 70s were dealing with the radicals, the Black Panthers, the Black Liberation Army. Then you have the 80s, and New York City really went through an adjustment. Crime is out of control into the 90s. And then once you get into our generation of cops, like the early 2000s up till now, I think our generation was very transitional. And that's what we had to deal with. Like, it was always about what's the next new technology, right? You have a business card, body camera, different type of vest. Then we were given tasers, different paperwork. So our generation was very transitional. But I think this generation now is at a tipping point. And the tipping point is that they're being recorded for content that goes viral. And I think we had to feel that in the end of my tenure, in the end of my career, we started to feel that. But not something that we had to go through our entire career. We were filmed because people wanted to turn it into civilian complaint review board. They wanted to try to get you for misconduct. But now, because of the 50A or lack of support, and because of the politicians and the legislation, the cops are legitimately just having encounters just so that it could go viral, just to bait them, just to get them to do something stupid. How do they react? And there is a zone of safety, and there is what I often say, the comfort zone. What happened to people just being comfortable and not having people standing over you or just filming you just because they want to abuse you? Why are we not having this discussion? What about just the dignity of cops? Two cops stand there, right? And people think, well, they're not doing anything. John talked about that earlier. The reality is they are. Right? It's mentally exhausting. If two cops stand there, they're canvassing their post, means they're looking around, they're looking for something that's obtuse, something that doesn't fit the baseline, a potential perpetrator, watching the area. So they're constant. And then they have sometimes one or two or several idiots agitating them, just trying to get content and divert their attention from what they're actually doing. So in some sense, there needs to be, I think, some type of proposal also and legislation that, because we often talk about obstructing governmental administration. And I think most of us understand that people are kind of acting out and loud and boisterous when it comes to OGA. But when people are actually having those encounters, I think the discussion has to be had. It is an obstruction of governmental administration because their intent is to try to divert the cops' attention from doing their job. And sometimes, it's just, hey, buddy, what's going on? Hey, did you look at your record? Like, remember that one time that female cop was crying because there was agitators approaching her about her record? And I think it's also diverting her attention from doing her job. So I do think it's a form and a discussion about, is it obstructing governmental administration? And I think it is.
I agree 100%. And I think it has a lot to do with the demeanor of them, that like why it's illegal. You know, I put up the law for OGA, obstructing governmental administration, and I got all these comments. You're a bootlicker. You steal people's constitutional rights. This isn't that you're stretching this. This is what you guys do. And I'm like, no, I'm not stretching it at all. Like, I obviously didn't comment back. I don't give a shit. I just read them and laugh. But I'm saying it here. Like, there is that intimidation factor that these influencers are trying to have over cops, and they're 100% taking them out of what they're being paid to do that day. Right? They're not listening to the radio anymore. They're not handling the job any longer that they were on. They're not performing their daily assignment anymore because they're being harassed. Right? And you're doing it in their face, on top of them, acting violent and tumultuous. 100% OGA. I'll bring up the law, but watch this video. Tell me, like a rational person, anybody in here that's not a police officer, do you believe that this is an arrestable offense? Do you believe this is acting disorderly? Do you believe this is harassment? If this happened to you, would you expect someone to be arrested for it? Not only is he intimidating them, not only is he acting violent and tumultuous, he's also sitting there hurling racial slurs at them in an attempt to intimidate them further and show control over them. And instead of them having any type of trained response to it, they just sit there and don't say a word and literally endanger themselves, because you don't know if this guy's not going to get more and more bold, turn around, crack you in the face, punch you in the face, stab you in the neck. Anything could happen at this point. And they don't even have their body cameras on when you watch it. They don't even think, hey, let me record this interaction of me getting abused, because now he wants to play with the criminal justice system. Now I'm going to document on camera him violating all those levels of OGA, the level of disorderly conduct. This is what you're doing in your head on every single encounter. The other thing is, Zero presence, zero interview stance. You got your back to a spike fence. You got your hands crossed. You got things in your hand. Immediately, I don't care what I was doing ever. I don't care if it was a 90-year-old lady. If I was sitting there with my foot up against the fence, drinking a bottle of water, and a 90-year-old woman came up, "Hi, officer." I instantly, just out of my training, got into my interview stance with my gun side back, my strong side back, and I literally, my hands were up, because till today, I still talk to people like that. And it's just been ingrained in me, and it's clearly not ingrained in these kids, that they need to, that there's no fear here from them, and they have no presence about them, and there's no interview stance. Watch this video. It's infuriating to me, and like, again, I as individuals, they failed, but as an organization, this is systemic, and they're the real failure, because this is what they're turning out over and over and over again. This is the majority. This is not the exception of NYPD cops in this new era of policing.
No. Huh? So you're the nerd. You actually know the law, right? You. Huh? You want me to get you something to drink, Chingling? They got you out here getting fucked. Yo, y'all sweating. Yo, he's getting fucked. Like, y'all getting fucked. Like, facts. You know that, right? You in the hood. Yo, you in a project getting fucked. They got you out here sweating. You desperate for some shade? Facts, yo. This nigga desperate for some shade. They look at me. Yo, what the fuck? They got, yo, did you buy that yourself, though?
Of course.
Dumb. They got you out here, bro. They got these motherfuckers out here paying for their own drinks in the shade. Damn. That's crazy, right? What do you got to say about that, though? Huh?
Nothing to say.
This is an interview. So just tell me, how does it feel? You're getting fucked by your own company. How does it feel? Huh? Come on, tell the people. They're fucking you. Do you like getting fucked? Huh? Look, now this actually means that you're officially gay. How do you feel about that, though? You're gay unwillingly. Wait, it's unwillingly, right? Huh? Is it? You're gay unwillingly, or you're willingly gay? Which one? No, you're not. Hey, yo, look. Quick question.
Mm-hmm.
How does it feel that you're getting fucked by your own company? This is an interview,
right.
Seriously.
Just keep a distance, all right?
I'm not intruding in your space or
I get
anything.
it.
I'm literally just right
Keep a
here.
distance.
All right, so just tell me. How does it feel that you're unwillingly gay? Huh? Huh? No? So you don't want to answer the public? You don't want to answer the public? Wow. So what about, what's your name? Lee. You're Chinese? Huh? So you don't want to answer questions? No? Oh, you guys are smart. Okay. All right. We got Lynn and Lee. Lynn Lee. Wait. Lynn Lee.
What do you think about that, Eric? I mean, that was a terrible display of police work. Awful display of police work.
It's terrible. So here's the reality, right? This is the sad part I'm saying. Is there specialized training for how these cops should handle these interactions? And what's sad about it is I don't think that back when we got on the job, that we needed specialized training, because we were, gritty New York City kids that wanted to be cops. I think we had a different temperament. And I think that our training from the onset was much different. And the culture of the job was to set boundaries. And that's where these cops fail. And they fail because there's no training. There's no understanding that you should always set boundaries. And what do I mean by setting boundaries? If they would have set boundaries, this interaction could have been changed completely. And someone like this wouldn't interact with cops that would set boundaries. And what I mean by is put your damn phone away, put your bottle away, and stand there and as you said, interview stance, or I call it indexing, where your hands are up and you're always at the ready, and create boundaries and set boundaries and tell that person filming, listen, you want to film, you have a right to film. But right now you divert my attention. I'm on this post, I'm watching. So stand back, go back and stand somewhere else, and you could film all day. And that would immediately change that interaction because they're not setting boundaries. He's getting on the phone, try to pretend like he's busy because he doesn't know how to handle the confrontation. That's this picture right here. The other guy is unsure, uncertain. He's answering some of those stupid questions, giving them what they want because he's unsure. They're uncertain. Now, I always say that competence leads to confidence. And you can see they lack confidence here because they're not competent. They don't know how to handle the situation. They've never handled it before. And so Stephen S. makes a great comment here to our friends that listen, also friend to the podcast. He says, good tactics are a habit. And what is a habit? A habit is something that you do repeatedly because of training. They don't have any training. They lack it. And their uncertainty and their unsureness leads to interactions like this. If this was us, we would handle this with confidence right away. Our arms would be at the ready, whether it's interview stance and your arms are indexing. I believe in indexing means your hands are always higher than your adversary when you talk to someone. Why? God forbid they do make a move, your hands are ready. Or maybe the praying stance, but you're talking with your hands ready, not while they're occupied and you look uncertain. That lack of confidence breeds this conversation even more. It emboldens these agitators. So the first thing that's most important, and it's a shame that we do training for it, is you need to set boundaries. If you're a cop and someone encounters you in a situation like this, you need to set boundaries immediately. And how do you set boundaries? By your physical command presence and by the things that you say.
Yeah, dude. I mean, so a couple of things. Like, it's definitely harassment of a police officer. It's definitely illegal. Definitely disorderly conduct. It's definitely OGA, but not the way they handle the situation. The way they handled the situation, it was perfectly legal because they never gave him any verbal commands. They never instructed him to do anything. They never built that case against him. He was like, do you like to get fucked? And they were like, yeah. Do you like to get harassed? Yeah. Okay, ching wing, this, that, the other thing. And they said nothing. Absolutely nothing. Zero presence. I see Juju's up in the chat today. He's on fire today. And here's the thing. Yeah. He's saying whatever. I'm not tough. I was fat. Like all these like crazy stuff. Whatever. Juju, you didn't know me obviously when we were on the show, but the thing is, you don't have to be tough. You just have to be a professional. You just have to act as if a professional. Carry yourself as a professional. Carry yourself in a manner that you would expect a police officer to do. They write all these movies about the NYPD. They have all these TV shows about the NYPD. Do you think they're writing a movie about this version of the NYPD? I don't think so. I don't think. Oh, what do we got in here? What do we got in here? What's up, Marlon?
Yo, morning, fellas.
You driving?
No, good morning.
Nah, I parked up. I was gonna get a charge, but the Starlink has been giving me trouble, so I had to move around a couple times.
Yeah.
Hey, this is like a Scott Monroe interview. You're in your car. Hey, Scott. Good morning, brother.
Yeah. Well, what's
so,
up,
Marlon,
fellas?
while you're in the car, tell us, man, what are your thoughts about cops being agitated for social media content?
Yeah, you know what? We talked a lot about this, and this isn't the first time it's happened. If you guys have been watching us for a while, but a lot of the same problems keep coming up, and those problems involve cops being so docile and being afraid to be a cop. We talked many times about the lack of veteran presence in the precincts to tell these guys, you're not, you can't take shit from you can't take shit from these guys, otherwise you're just emboldening them more. But like I said, in those times, we're also dealing with a problem, I think, with Generation Z. And I've talked about this before, how a lot of Generation Z seem to be the product of helicopter parenting. And, they didn't have a lot of the freedoms we did when we were kids. A lot of us were, when we were babies. Look, I was in Grenada until I was 7. And as a baby, I was walking in the street, walking to houses in the village. And, this is something that they wouldn't even do back there now, let alone in America where, you know, when you're a preteen, you're running around and scraping up your knees and falling. I think a lot of the kids now didn't have that growing up, and you're seeing the product of it as adults now. And unfortunately, it's a bad combination with the terrible training and the lack of veteran presence in the precincts.
Yeah, well, if you read OGA here, right, and you guys all witnessed what happened there. If you read that, it's 19505, obstructing governmental administration in the second. A person is guilty of obstructing governmental administration when such a person intentionally obstructs, impairs, or perverts administration of law or other government function, or prevents or attempts to prevent a public servant from performing an official function by means of intimidation, physical force, or any interference, or by means any independently unlawful act, or by means of interfering, whether or not physical force is involved. Like, so that's what people don't understand is like, that is a crime, what was happening. What I was trying to say, though, is the way that those cops handled themselves is they never gave any verbal warnings. They never gave any instruction. They never gave anything that would say, well, you know what you're doing is illegal and you need to stop doing it now. In essence, building a case against a person who felt that he wanted to learn about the criminal justice system that day. They never gave him that lesson because apparently they never got that lesson either. I agree with you. There is a difference between our generation and the newer generation. New York City 26, he says, why are they not making any direct eye contact? It's rare today when I talk to a young person that they make eye contact with me. It's very rare. This is the new age of social distancing, the new age of everything's on your phone, everything's on a computer. You play video games with your friends online. You don't interact physically with people. So eye contact is a thing that's also there, but it's not anything that can't be trained when you step into a system. People aren't born. They learn how to play football. They learn how to play. They aren't born and know how to play football, know how to play basketball, know how to play baseball, know how to fight jiu-jitsu, know how to do MMA. People aren't born with that. They're trained into that. Did I talk to people in an interview stance before becoming a cop? No. I mean, I interacted with people. I didn't let myself get abused, but that was a trained stance from the NYPD that till today, I still carry with me. Till today, if I saw Juju and I was nothing but nice to him and I just went up and started talking to him, he would be afraid at my presence by the way I carried myself. That was something that was trained in the NYPD. We all stood the same. We walked the same. We talked the same because we were trained the same. These kids have zero training. And you could tell. It's like putting someone out on a baseball field and they know nothing about baseball. They have no mannerisms of a baseball player. They have no mannerisms of a basketball player. They don't know how to dribble a ball. They don't know how to shoot the ball. They don't know the rules of the game. It's the same here. Like when I watch these new kids, I'm like, these kids were never coached. They don't understand what they're doing. They don't understand how to be cops. They don't understand how to keep themselves safe. The only thing they know is everything that they can't do. All they know.
Now, listen, I don't expect these two young police officers to be trained fighters. I don't. So the reality is, most people, let's be honest, the primal part of a man's brain, like every man wants to believe that he's an amazing fighter, but yet, every man believes they're an amazing fighter, and even if they don't train. So the reality is, I mean, if you never fixed a car before, are you a mechanic? But somehow every man believes that they can fight. So I don't expect these guys to be trained fighters. But what I do expect them is to have a sense of resilience. So that's why I think Billy Blastoff makes a great comment. He says, those two young officers never had a fist fight in their entire life, and these street mutts were all over it. And that's absolutely right. Now, I'm not saying that you have to be a trained fighter, but growing up in New York City, right, it was rough and tumble. And I think that we all, I know I was always involved in combat sports. I boxed for many years. I did all kinds of training. I was involved in combat sports. Even before that, as a kid growing up, I played football in the street, basketball in the streets. We had physical confrontations, wrestling, fist fights. I'm not condoning it, but what came out of that is that you understood later on in life, especially when you came on as a police officer, right? John, you and I didn't have that interview stance, but we had a sense of resilience and dignity. We didn't want someone to come into our space. Now, the NYPD trained us about the interview stance, about indexing, which I still use to this day also. That was trained. And so the things that we understood were refined and retuned. And I think that these young cops, I don't think they were ever punched in the face. I don't think they had those type of interactions. And I'm not saying they should be punched in the face, but it does change the way you stand with people. And when you learn the interview stance and learn indexing that, hey, you don't want to get punched in the face because getting punched in the face sucks. And you know that it hurts. And you know that's going to stop you. And if these young kids clearly have never had that type of interaction in their life, then they're not even aware that when someone is encountering them with a video in front of their face, that they're actually in danger. And that if he poke them in the eye or punch them in the face, that they're that it sucks. And people don't understand that. And getting punched in the face does suck. That's why sometimes, you see videos, oh, why did a cop, punch a 14-year-old girl? Well, getting punched in the face sucks. Even if you hold a 2-year-old baby and the baby pokes you in the eye by accident, your vision is distorted for a second. So people need to understand that. So Billy Blastoff, I think you bring up a great point. I'm not condoning violence or should you be out there fighting in the street. But if you are involved in sports and you're involved in those wrestling, physical confrontations, you'll understand that getting punched in the face is risky and dangerous. And I think these cops don't understand the reality. And just our whole social apparatus has changed. I watched on social media a while back some young girl. She was in her early 20s. Beautiful girl. Said that don't approach her. She can't even get a date unless she goes online. So it's just this world has changed. People are not interacting socially. They interact online. They're gamers, or they interact just on social media outlets and not necessarily in person. And that has changed a lot. And these two cops, to me, I don't know them personally, but I think they fall into that category. And I think it's scary. I think that we grew up in a different time, a different culture. And these guys do need more training for that reason. They do need training to understand the difference between someone recording you because they want potential misconduct or accountability, or they want just you to go viral. So they need to understand the difference. And they need to understand that, hey, if someone is in your space, you need to create boundaries and set those boundaries so that they don't punch you in the face. And maybe they need to bring boxing gloves back and they need to get punched in the face so they understand that. And I'm not saying that you're promoting violence. I think that you actually, if you get punched in the face and you're doing combat sports, you're less likely to engage in physical altercations because you know the realities of the dangers of it. Someone who's never gotten into a fight in their life, who maybe has an image and thinks that they can handle themselves, would be better off if they're involved in a situation of combat sports. So combat sports, it's not just for people that are super aggressive, but it's also for people that are timid and meek. And I think it's for everyone.
Yeah, you bring up great points about the communication being all digital and online now, and I do believe that that might be part of the problem too. The fact that that generation grew up always online, and whereas especially if you're an older millennial or you're Gen X, you grew up you grew up before the internet became a thing, or you were there to see part of the world before the internet, whereas a lot of these guys were just born with the internet in their hands. And, you see a lot of young kids and they're on that tablet as soon as they hit 1 year old, as soon as their fingers can be nimble, they're playing on a iPad. So I do think that that plays a part into it as well. But, one of the first things you learn in the academy is presence, right? So I don't understand why in that video they don't, if even if you don't know anything about policing, you're just a rookie that came out of the academy and you don't know what the hell's going on. You don't know what summons you can give, what your boundaries are, what the public's boundaries are. You should at least be aware of presence, and the fact that the public cannot get that there's a certain distance that the public has to maintain around you because you have a lot of dangerous tools on your belt that could be used on people, on other people, and on yourself. And to me, that was like one of the first things you're taught in the academy.
Yeah, and the other thing is, look, not everybody that comes on this job was a great communicator. Like I grew up in New York City. I grew up in a lot of diverse neighborhoods. I met with a lot of people. I was an effective communicator. I did sales before I became on the job. I had thousands upon thousands upon thousands of interactions with people prior to being an NYPD officer. So if somebody approached me like that, I could change that situation in a second. Wouldn't even lead to an arrest. I'd start making fun of him. He'd be like, I'm out of here. I'm getting abused. You know what I mean? But a lot of people don't have that, right? And so that's why the importance of having experienced officers, not only having one, it should start in the academy. And I'm going to say clearly what we were trained in the academy is not being trained. I look at all of these young kids. They do not move the same. They do not look like us. They do not carry themselves in an interview stance. They don't stand in that posture. That is gone. I don't know what goes on there, but it's not being trained. Nobody could tell me that it is. Then when they get out there, there's no experienced officers. Because when I got into the NYPD, I thought that I was sharp with my tongue. I thought that I was quick. And then I was around other guys that were so much quicker than me, that were cops longer than me, and they could diffuse a situation like that. They understood how to communicate. And I would watch those guys, and I would just literally emulate everything they said and everything they did. And I would know how to deal, and I learned encounter after encounter after encounter. I never sat there like that, though. I never would allow myself to get abused like that, whether I did a day in the police academy, in a professional police department, in a trained police department, or I didn't. There is something seriously wrong with the NYPD. We've been talking about it forever. Somebody early on jumped in the chat, asked, is creatine banned in the NYPD? It's not. Get an NSF certified one, but masculinity certainly is. Masculinity, or any trace or form of it, has certainly been removed from NYPD training, has certainly been removed from where they're looking to recruit from. People in here are saying this is the kind of cop they want. And honestly, I totally agree 1000%. This is the exact response they want from cops. They want them to stand there and do nothing. This is a trained systemic response. This isn't these individuals. And that's why I keep saying this. Is this a problem that DEI has made worse? Absolutely. Is this a problem that the 30 for 30 has made worse? Absolutely. But this overall, the problem is they do not want, the Democrats do not want a competent police force. People see this and be like, they're Mondani cops, they're this cops. No, they're Eric Adams cops, they're Bill de Blasio cops, they're Andrew Cuomo cops, they're Kathy Hochul cops, they're New York Democrat cops. This is the Democratic machine. This is what they want from policing. They want guardians. They don't want warriors. They don't want a masculine stance from the NYPD. They want a feminine one. And I'm sorry, the feminine one is an inept one. And we see it here. This is what it is.
More, I thought you were going to go. I'll take a stab at this. But I think it goes even beyond that. And I think every point that we're making here is spot on. And the reality is these young cops are just not prepared for life, or at least the way that we see life. And honestly, that really is a perspective. The way that we lived, it really is not only a different generation, we live differently. John, you grew up, and I grew up in Marlin, same thing, running in the streets. How did our parents tell us to get dinner? Someone was screaming out the window, and that's how we all went home for dinner. These kids today, I don't even think they leave the house. So it's we just live differently. When we were young, we grew up. I remember, you remember growing up and being nervous about when you would meet a girl, and you have to try to remember her phone number and find a pen somewhere and write it down on your hand, or you wrote it somewhere because you knew. Let's say you went out, at 16 years old or 15 years old, and you met a girl, you wanted to write her phone number somewhere. And then you had that nervous reaction. We all been there, and you grabbed the phone like 10 times, and you figured out what you were going to say, and you were praying her father didn't answer the phone. You were praying she actually answered the phone. So these kids today didn't have those type of reactions. Let's be honest, right? When you were at a club, when I was at a club as a kid, and you met a girl, you were praying that you had a pen, you wrote her phone number down, and if you were sweating, you were hoping by the time you came home that the phone number was still there, and it didn't come off from you sweating, if you had a piece of paper. So it's just a different life. I think we had more challenges. I think growing up today is just far different. It's just a different life. They don't have those nervous reactions. I mean, honestly, you could go on ChatGPT today, and you can tell ChatGPT what to say to do the text for you, just to what conversation. So we think differently. We don't think just completely emotional. It's a different life. It really is a different life. It's almost like these kids now, honestly, they look like aliens to me. I went to a Burger King one day, and the kid had his hair. It was like such a crazy crazy hairstyle. It was covering his face. I couldn't even see the kid's face. So I'm like, where have we gotten to? Just kids are just completely different. So I teach my kids, and I know this is another thing. Like you talked about them looking away and not looking. That's huge. That's setting a boundary, and that's where people see your confidence. I teach my kids that if you can't get the color of someone's eye, you weren't looking them in the eye. So I teach my kids when they meet people to look them in the eye. And you should be able to, after you have an interaction, you should be able to tell me the color of their eyes. If you can't tell me the color of their eyes, you weren't actually focused on their face and looking at their eyes. If I had to ask those two cops right now, could you tell me the color of the eyes of that agitator? They probably couldn't tell me because they weren't really looking at him.
They wouldn't look at him, dude.
They didn't look at him at all.
They wouldn't look at him. They were like,
they probably couldn't even tell me what he was wearing.
You know what they were like? They were like the kid that's afraid at night, and they're like, if I just don't look at the closet in the dark, like I'm not, like the monster won't come out, and like that's what they were like. Like if I don't look, he'll go away. Like no, dude, he's not going away. Like he's gonna continue.
And I really believe in that. I really do. I teach my kids you should get the color of someone's eye. If you're looking at someone, you're focused at the color of their eye, you're actually looking them in the eyes. Now I'm not saying you do that the entire time. You don't want to be a creep. But you should be able to get the color eyes. And I don't think these kids actually knew what this guy, if the agitator had thrown something at them or did something and took off running, and if we had to ask those two cops right now, could you describe what this agitator was wearing? They probably couldn't. So we've just, life has changed. We lack on policing. We just lack simple interactions. It's just completely different. Growing up by the phone, and the phone can tell you what to do, and they don't have those same challenges. Like you said, I said growing up and you had to write a girl's phone number down and they call her being nervous and praying her brother or father didn't answer the phone. And you said 10 times like, hey, hello, you're trying to make your voice deeper too. They don't have that. It's just, they don't have that type of, those challenges of to text or call a woman, and deal with the family. It's just, his life is different, man.
Yeah, that'll be the nicest I ever was. Hi, Izza. How you doing?
I remember come on, let's be honest. When you were at a club, the limelight as a kid or exit, didn't you try to remember a girl's phone number? Or you wrote it on your head and got home like, shit, I was sweating. It came off. Oh, well. It's probably not that good.
I wrote a few phone numbers on my hand. Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to point out that a lot of these kids also grew up when bullying became like a public, became a public issue. Back in the day, bullying was like an issue of discipline, and one that largely was handled between your peers. And like since the late 90s, maybe the early 2000s, bullying became like a public issue where the media would talk about bullying, the politicians would talk about bullying, and then we entered like the social media era, and social media bullying became a thing, and even like there were laws passed, and even the CDC and what's the other agency? I know it was I know it was a CDC. I don't remember which other agency. Maybe the yeah. But anyway, regardless, the point is that they began to treat bullying like a public health issue, and I think that also changes the dynamic that that in schools and what these kids are taught. And if they think of it, if they're taught to be to really stand up and hold their ground and to look somebody in the eye, they may be thinking to themselves, I might be perceived as an aggressor here. I might be perceived as a bully myself. So that whole system kind of encourages them to be docile and be timid. So what happens when those kids grow up to be adults now?
Well, again, that's what I'm saying is they don't want a masculine police department. They want an incompetent in that police
Yeah.
department. This is a little off topic, and like NYPD did a great job at this. This happened in Rockaway, Queens. Maniac shot 2 of his family members, his in-laws, lit the house on fire, refused orders from the NYPD. ESU goes to the scene and basically shoots the individual. He lives, but he kills his in-laws. So complete other maniac. NYPD did a great job, but you would never know that they did a great job listening to the leadership of the NYPD. And look, this has an effect on what's turning out of the New York City Police Academy. When you put people as leaders in roles of leadership positions and they don't know their fucking job, they cannot train anybody properly. I'm sorry. Everyone's going to be like, oh, you're racist. You're picking on him. You're this, you're that. Good. Call me all of it because I don't care because somebody needs to say it. This guy has no business being a fucking 2-star chief. He can't even sit up there and explain what happened. Now, I read about this story in the Post and in a few other papers. I read about it on social media posts from social media influencers. I read about it in a lot of different places. So I had a good understanding of what happened. And then I listened to the chief of Queens speak on this. And I'm like, I don't know. What is he saying? Like, what happened? What happened? And like, we sit there and we're like, oh, well, none of the cops know what they're doing. But obviously there's still some good work happening. Those are obviously being done by senior officers, the work, competent, experienced, skilled officers. But the leadership of the NYPD is absolutely abysmal. Like, you got a guy who's a 2-star chief. He can't even get up. First of all, he can't dress properly. He wears his hat like an idiot. Then he gets up and he can't read off of a piece of paper. And I personally don't think he should be reading anything off that piece of paper. He should be able to spit out exactly what just happened, like everybody that was on the scene, like everybody, the cops, the detectives, the sergeants, the lieutenants, the captains. He should be able to spit that off at the top of his head. But at least if you're going to read off a piece of paper for whatever reason, you rush there, I don't know, at least study that piece of paper, read it a few times, understand it. But like, listen to this. And then it's like, how could you expect anything else but what we saw from those 2 cops? I'm just going to play like 2 minutes of it, not even, but it's absolutely like, I'm like, I put a post on it. Of course, I'm a racist. Of course, everything, but it's the truth. This guy has no business being a 2-star chief. I'm sorry. And that is the problem in policing. And then you have those effects go down. You put people in charge that don't understand what they're doing, don't know their job, don't take ownership over their job. And then they're in charge of training these individuals. And how could they train these individuals when they don't know the job themselves?
Good afternoon. I'm Assistant Chief Christopher McIntosh, the Command Officer of Patrol Bar Queens South. I'm joined today with Inspector Paul Muggio, the Executive Officer of Force Investigation Division, and Captain Sean Finnegan, the Operation Commander of the Detective Bureau Queens South. I'm here today to provide you regarding an officer-involved shooting which occurred earlier this morning in the Far Rockaway section of Queens. Today, we are reminded of the dangers officers encounter every day when they put on the uniform and answer the call for help. The information I'm about to provide you is preliminary and is subject to change. At approximately 12:02 p.m. this afternoon, patrol officers from the 101 precinct responded to 2533 Ocean Crest Boulevard after receiving a 911 call for shots fired inside the residence. The caller stated that her husband was armed and had a history with mental illness, and he quoted, kill them. When the officers arrived on the scene, they encountered the subject's wife outside of the residence. She told the officers that she heard gunshot in the room, walked into the room where she heard shots, and she saw a body on the bed. She immediately ran out of the resident and called 911. Additionally, she told the responding officers to be careful because her husband has a shotgun. The patrol officers on the scene requested emergency service and additional support and established a safe perimeter. While waiting for the emergency service, patrol officers tried several times to call and establish a conversation with the subject. At approximately 12 p.m., ESU arrived on the scene. As ESU was preparing to make entries into the residence, at approximately 12:15, a large fiery explosion erupted from the house. Within 15 to 20 seconds of the explosion, the subject emerged from the house armed with a shotgun while wearing a tactical vest with additional ammo in it. Officers issued numerous verbal commands for the subject to put his hands up so he could drop the weapon. After failing to comply with repeat commands to put his hands up and still armed with a shotgun, officers destroyed their weapon and struck the subject. Officers took the subject into custody and rendered aid. He's currently at Jamaica Hospital in critical but stable condition. Responding officers were taken to an area hospital.
I can't. I mean, is it me? Am I overreacting? But like, are you shocked? Like, I'm sorry. Like,
apparently Bushmouth is in.
You don't even know what happened. Quote resident. They left the resident. They were in the resident. Like, what are you talking about? I couldn't keep up with him, dude.
Like I said, apparently Mushmouth is in because I think honestly, public speaking should be a requirement, and there is a sense of intelligence with public speaking also in a trained response. You have to train yourself to be a good public speaker, and you have to take the time out. And I agree with you 100%, John. To just read from a piece of paper shows you don't know your job, a lack of competence, and you sure as hell don't care. You should get there, and if you don't know what happened, ask people, find out, and prep yourself. What am I going to say about this? But reading from that, where you can't even read it, and it's not even sounding sensible, is absolutely terrible. How can we expect two police officers to understand how to handle interaction with social media agitators and how to look them in the eye and be confident and competent when your two-star chief lacks such that? He's in charge of an entire borough, and you can barely speak. You didn't take the time out. Forget about reading it. Find out what happened and speak from the heart and speak about the knowledge. And honestly, right now, John, based off that, you and I and Marlon could both give a speech without looking at that piece of paper right now on how two cops responded to an incident where an emotionally disturbed person was potentially armed with a shotgun, and that shotgun was an adversary threat. And when they were approached with that shotgun, they had to take action. You don't need. I mean, it's like, they gave him verbal commands. I love how they have to throw that in about the verbal commands. Yeah, no shit.
He literally read the fucking quote. I'm like,
he read the paper. That was it.
Are you kidding me, dude? And look, this is like the third time we're bringing up press conferences with him. He's horrendous.
He's a two-star chief.
It's the same shit, dude. Like, you didn't learn on the first two? Like,
I'm sorry. There's no excuse for that. Anybody who tells us, oh, you guys are racist. Oh, not everyone's a good public speaker. Well, not everyone should be a two-star chief either. So if anyone thinks it's racist or we're berating him, you're damn right. How do we expect two young police officers to be able to articulate themselves and handle interaction where two-star chief, think about that. There's not that many people that outrank you. You run an entire borough in the biggest city in the entire world, the largest police department, and you can't put two words together? Shame on you. Shame on the police department for actually promoting him. And I think it's embarrassing. And I think, yes, you should be expected to be articulate in public speaking. And if you're not, go train yourself. There are numerous actors who've talked about the struggles they had who were dyslexic and couldn't put two words together, and they trained themselves to be good actors. A two-star chief, you should be prepping yourself and teaching yourself and training yourself how to speak to the public and how to sound confident. If you don't sound confident, how can the public have public trust and be confident in our police force? Absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, I admit I'm not a good public speaker, but again, I think I've gotten a whole lot better ever since coming on this podcast and being able to practice, essentially, which is what we're doing, especially since on here you're doing it on the fly and bringing up certain topics and points on the fly. And like anything else, the more you practice, the better you get at it. The more you summons people, the more you arrest people, the more you you know your job, is the better cop you become. You know, at a certain point, even if even if you have bricks in your head, and you're an idiot, you the job starts to become routine because you've done it so much that you understand what to do. And it's like anything else, practice, you get better at it. So with that said, I agree with you. I don't understand why he hasn't gotten better, especially since, on route to becoming an assistant chief, you've got to go through many of these other supervisory ranks that necessitate you publicly speaking, right? Or, and talking in front of a lot of people, bringing up topics on the fly, answering questions on the fly. For instance, you're a captain, you're going to those community council meetings. They're going to be asking you questions, right? You're going to have to answer them. So I don't understand how you, as an assistant chief, doesn't have this stuff down pat. You don't have a routine in place for times where you have to think on the fly and bring up certain issues, and, or talk about what happened at a crime scene. This ain't your first rodeo doing that. So
I don't care if you're a cop, you were a detective. Like maybe. I don't like speaking in front of crowds. If you made an arrest and I'm like, what do you got? Oh, Sarge, I got one under. What do you got?
yeah,
You're gonna be able to articulate. Maybe not your
True,
first time,
true.
maybe not your second time, but your third or fourth time, as the sergeant rolls up, you know exactly what happens.
Yep.
When you're a sergeant, it becomes a whole new level now, because you show up to that crime scene, you have to let every single person know what happened. You have to let operations know what happened. You have to let your CO know what happens. You have to let everybody and their mother. You're going to notify the
True.
borough. You might notify
True.
all these other agencies. You are going to be able to spit that out. And you just dealt with that situation. So you were just in a traumatic situation. Your adrenaline still dumping, and you're able to spit that out. Now you're a chief. You went through all of these ranks, supposedly. Supposedly you were competent enough and you went to all these ranks. I'm going to say absolutely fucking not. So, but supposedly you went through those ranks. You studied. Supposedly you took the test on test day. Supposedly, I would bet totally against all of those things. But supposedly you went through all those things. And now you get up to assistant chief and you're responding home. You don't have that adrenaline dump any longer. You were not in that traumatic situation. You're getting notified after the fact and you're responding after the fact, and you're getting briefed by numerous individuals telling you what happened, right? You have inspectors and chiefs briefing you. You have the head of the detective squads briefing you. You have a much clearer picture than that sergeant has, and you have no idea what you're talking about. They should have just brought up the patrol sergeant who was still shaken from having his gun pointed at a dude that just murdered people in his family and wouldn't drop the gun. He had to call ESU. He had to make all these decisions on the fly. He or she had to make all these decisions on the fly, worry about the safety of their officers, worry about the legality of what they were going to do, worry about all these things, notify everybody, get all the proper units there, then brief everybody as to what happened. And you're rolling up and you don't know what the fuck happened. The resident, this, that, quote, like, how about just tell us what happened? How about just tell us what happened? But you can't, because you don't care. And because you weren't never really good at your job. And that's why. Like, it's one thing to have an accent. It's one thing to have a talk with slang. It's all those things don't matter. If I talk to the majority of cops from our era and I ask them what they got at a job, they're going to be able to spew out exactly what they have at a job. If I talk to the majority of sergeants from our era, they're going to be able to spew it out like this. And again, they were the ones that dealt with it. They didn't even get that third person point of view where they could put it together. They're giving you the first person point of view, and they would have gave it much smoother, much clearer than that. They would no need for that piece of paper. When you watch FDNY chiefs do it, they're never doing that. They're never reading from that piece of paper. They're telling you what they got. NYPD chiefs today, because they are all a bunch of incompetent, inept, DEI or compliant political ally hires. None of them are there from competence. None of them.
Well, I tell you this, first of all, unsatisfactory and unacceptable for anyone. I mean, we're even saying here, like, go take the time and train and prep for it. No, it's too late. You should not be a 2-star chief. As you climb those ranks, you should have been prepping yourself and being prepared. And when you get promoted to the position of 2-star chief, that person should already be articulate and be able to explain these things on camera. It's a little too late to learn it as a 2-star chief. One thing I learned in the Marine Corps is you always prepare for the next rank when you're in that rank prior. So clearly that didn't happen here. So clearly along the way, as he was getting promoted through the ladder, he wasn't able to do these things. When you get to the rank of 2-star chief, it's a little too late to say, oh, we need to send this guy to classes. You should have already been prepared. Your career, if properly done, should have groomed you in that position. You should not be a 2-star chief if you can't speak to the public. When people could say, oh, I guarantee, John, I'm sure I'm going to get a call today like always. Oh, but he's a nice guy. I'm sure he's a nice guy. Everybody in the NYPD is a nice guy.
I expect that he is. I would bet money that he is.
I bet he's a nice, but great. A nice guy doesn't cut the mustard. A nice guy doesn't put the delivery out there. And forget about reading from there. We try to give him the benefit of the doubt and say, oh, you got there. You didn't really know what happened. No. You know damn well you were 2-star chief and your phone rang 8,000 times and you were briefed 1,000 times over and over. You heard the same thing over and over. He heard it. By the time he got to the scene, his phone had already rung 1,000 times. He heard exactly what happened over and over and over already. And the fact that he couldn't regurgitate that information shows a lack of intelligence and competence. And I'm sorry to say this, 2-star chief McIntosh, you suck. I'm sorry, you suck because you failed on giving an articulate speech. You failed on providing the information, which means you failed those 2 cops on the street that got agitated. Why? Because they're a representation of you. What happens in leadership happens in the rank and file. So absolutely, failure. You suck.
Yeah. You brought up a great point, John. I didn't think about that, but think of it. You're a rookie, you're a cop, and the sergeant rolls up and he asks you what you got, and you're like mumbling and you're unsure of yourself. Then how, I would assume the sergeant would second guess what you got there, and he might start showing up to every one of your jobs and he micromanaging you. In fact, how does the job have confidence you're a good cop if you can barely explain what you have, or you're timid and you won't speak up about what you have. So it's a good point. Very good point. But I have to wonder, like, how did he perform at CompStat? Because I I was watching some old videos of Chief Anamone in the 90s at CompStat, and brutal, brutal. And I sure he wasn't in CompStat in the 90s, but you could only imagine, like, I can't imagine being a captain or an inspector or whoever showing up at CompStat and being so, like, being so shy, or timid, or not being able to fully articulate what you have there. I would think at some point the chief on the on the desk would tell you, like, what's wrong with you? Speak up here. You're not a rookie that just jumped out the academy.
Well, John, before you take a stab at this and we get to Kalshi, I just want to say that I tell you why. I know, because I went to CompStat every 6 weeks or every 4 to 6 weeks in the Bronx, Wisconsin. It's because it was DEI CompStat. And people can tell me I'm racist for saying this. Absolutely true. It was DEI CompStat, and everyone knows exactly what I'm talking about. If a white commander was at the podium, they would ask 1,000 questions, and they had to articulate themselves. And if I saw black female commanders and black commanders of precincts, and that's the reality. It's not being racist, true. That who couldn't articulate themselves, and they would ask ground ball questions, and when they didn't answer it, they weren't asked any more questions. It was very simplified. It's a shame. There were some black commanders that were fantastic that could speak really well, but some of them were DEI promotions, and some of them, and it was DEI CompStat, and those questions were ground balls, and if they weren't ground balls, then they weren't asked. I watched a female commander in transit who didn't know anything about her command, anything. They asked her one question, she failed, and they just, moved on and said, thank you for your service. Pretty much thanked her. They were thanking her, and she could barely articulate herself. So, yes, it's a DEI CompStat.
Yeah, and then she got promoted right after, I bet.
Probably. Well, I know she threw her lieutenant under the bus, and that guy he was a special ops lieutenant in transit. She threw him on the bus, and they moved him.
Leadership. I don't know what I'm doing, so I'll blame my subordinates. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, that's crazy, because I mentioned this story here a couple times. In the 7-7, we had a CO around 2008, 10, so you can figure it out. But he had a bad comp set. I mean, it was bad. And by the time he came back, we knew we're getting a new CO in like a couple weeks. So I don't understand how you screw up there and you still get promoted without any meaningful change to your demeanor or your presentation.
Yeah, unbelievable, unbelievable. All right, before we go further, we're gonna switch topics in a minute. But before we do that, let's just give a little shout out to our partners over at Kalshi. So the 2026 primaries are taking shape, and you can trade the biggest political races on Kalshi. On Kalshi, you can trade major primary election outcomes and the biggest political storylines as they happen. Will the SAVE Act become law before January 4th, 2027? Right now, the SAVE Act becoming law is currently trading at 7%, meaning a $100 trade would pay out $1,268. On Kalshi, you're trading against peers in a live market, meaning there's no house. And as the probability changes, you can buy in and out of your position. For a limited time, download the Kalshi app and use code FINEST to earn up to $500 when you trade $25. KALSHI, Kalshi. Trade on anything. 18 plus only. Restrictions and eligibility requirements apply. Event contract trading involves risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Prices, values, and available markets may differ from those mentioned. For more information, see Kalshi.com/regulatory. All right. You guys got anything else on this before we switch? We got two more topics. Eric's got a hard out at 10:30. I know Marlon, you're busy, so let's try to keep it to the 10:30 and get out of here. Two more topics. We're gonna obviously talk about the tragic death of the 12-year-old son that was murdered by a stray bullet due to gang violence in the Bronx. I think we'll save that one for the last one. But before that, I think unless you guys got anything else, I just want to touch on this real quick with the first NYPD officer being charged on the George Floyd inspired chokehold bill, basically the diaphragm law or what we call the chokehold bill, right? The chokehold bill, the diaphragm law, because I did a little post about this and the reactions that I got from cops, there were cops literally defending the law and saying that you could work around it. Anything else on that other topic before we move on? What do you guys?
Nope.
So what do you guys? I mean, what do you guys think about this? Obviously, we've been talking about this for a long time. We were originally told we can't be afraid. We were on the job when this law passed in 2020, right on the heels of George Floyd's death. And city council rushes out, passes this bill, says that cops can't choke anyone, can't perform a chokehold, or it's a misdemeanor crime against them. They'll be arrested. And cops cannot put pressure. And this was the point that people were arguing with me about, that they can't sit, kneel, or stand on a resisting suspect's back. So think about that. You're arresting a terrorist. You're arresting someone who just murdered someone who's trying to murder someone who's trying to murder you. And we're going to say you can never, ever put them in a chokehold. You can never sit on their back, kneel on their back, stand on their back. You can never do those things in a fight for your life or in a fight to preserve someone else. We've said it on here over and over again that at literally every video we see cops playing patty cake with perpetrators now because they're attempting not to violate this law. Yet every single time they fail and they until the situation escalates, and then they violate the law because it's the only way to put a non-compliant perpetrator in handcuffs is to use the basic principles of wrestling and the basic principles of jiu-jitsu to effect an arrest and handcuff a resisting perpetrator. What New York City Council did is basically make it a crime for NYPD officers. They made it a crime for NYPD officers to arrest a resisting suspect. That's what they did. There's no other way around it. We were told that the chiefs of the NYPD, they spoke to the district attorneys. They were never going to use this. And at the time, I kept saying they would not pass a law if they weren't going to use it. They will use it. It's just a matter of time. And once they do, watch out, because it's going to literally everyone. This is the first NYPD officer. He's getting charged from Bronx DA Darcel Clark for using a chokehold. And I guarantee he's not going to be the last. What do you guys think about this? What do you think about cops defending this and saying that, in fact, the academy can train around this and you can lock up a resisting perpetrator without using these tools?
Well, there's a point right there that shows you ridiculous. The idea that the academy, because the academy does have a lot of trained professionals that know damn well that this is the biggest bullshit, but they fell in line because of compliance and pretend that you can train around this. This is absolutely, you can't train around this. The reality is to control a subject, to control another human being, it requires you to put pressure on the chest or the back, using your knee or whatever body part you want to use it, using your body, chest to chest. That is the only way to get someone compliant, unless they're compliant. But a resisting perpetrator requires that. There's no doubt about it. Or you are forced to use brutal tactics, which are repeatedly deploying strikes. So, and the idea that we could train around this, to me, shows people who've never actually really trained. Because I know damn well there are people in the academy that are highly trained themselves, and I'm sure they're not on board with this, but they found a way themselves to sleep at night by being compliant, just as we did with the vaccine mandate, because they need a job and they need a paycheck. But the reality is, you have to put pressure on someone to control another human being. One of the hardest things there is to do in life is to control another human being. Even to try to control a child is difficult, right? If your kid is out of control, it's hard to hold your kid down, right? Without trying to hurt them. It's the same thing. If you're trying to hold down a subject and not trying to hurt them, it requires putting pressure on their chest and their back and putting pressure in those key locations, right? Because how do you pin someone? It's by pinning their shoulders and their hips. And that's how you pin their shoulders and their hips, is by putting pressure in those areas. If not, you are forced to use brutal tactics. We don't hit our kids, right? You wouldn't want to calm your kid down by hitting your kid, right? But you would have to hold your kid down, right? And so this is just absolutely ridiculous that we train this way. And for cops to believe this ideology is absolutely ridiculous. And shame on the leadership of the NYPD. For instance, started with Terrence Bend the Knee Monahan. Shame on him at a ComStat for telling the police department and his leadership under him, his underlings, not to worry about it. So the NYPD is trying to pretend that this doesn't exist. Oh, don't worry about it. This is on board and this is in the books. And the fact that the NYPD try to navigate this and not combat that. And also, I have an issue with the unions not fighting enough on this. Yes, there was some pushback from the PBA, but not enough. No cop is in a situation where they can really protect themselves with these laws. And the fact that they have on the books, never apply a chokehold, never put any pressure. This is absolutely ridiculous. In policing, we very rarely use the words never. And unfortunately, the best tool they've taken away from cops, and that is applying a chokehold. And if trained properly, a chokehold is far better than hitting someone with numerous strikes. Now, I'm not saying you should apply a chokehold on everyone, but if you're in a life and death situation or that struggle is on, you may need to apply a chokehold, especially if someone is much larger, a bigger adversary. And one thing is, I don't care how big you are, we all have necks that are weak. And to apply a chokehold may stop someone and save the lives of a cop or someone else. So to say never is absolutely ridiculous. And it's difficult and frustrating. And I struggle with the fact and grapple and wrestle with the fact that they want cops to go out there and navigate this and train around this. It's absolutely ridiculous. And you see that cops are completely cognizant of it. And watch cops numerous times where they're in a position with a perpetrator who's on the ground fighting, and they're not putting any pressure on their chest. So cops are completely aware of it. And it just looks absolutely ridiculous. For someone who trains like myself or anyone that trains, when you watch these scenarios and these interactions, you know damn well it looks silly.
Yeah. You know, every time I see cops taking down a perp now, I think you just violated the diaphragm law. Okay, you inadvertently violated that diaphragm law, because like you guys said, you can't meaningfully restrain somebody without putting some sort of pressure on their upper back. And even though the new thing I've seen is cops, you're sitting basically on the guy's butt and you're trying to grab his arms, and it's like, come on now, come on. you're still violating the diaphragm law here. Okay, there's no way around it. But welcome to the Finest Unfiltered, where we tell you guys the issues. You call us crazy, and we don't know what we're talking about. And then months later or a year later, a cop gets indicted for the same problems that we talked about. Okay, and we talked about it was only a matter of time before somebody's gonna get, the DA is gonna make an example out of somebody. And sure enough, here we are. And I'm pretty sure we may have mentioned Darcel Clark somewhere in there too, because if it's gonna happen, it's probably gonna happen in the Bronx these days. Apparently, apparently she wants her borough to continue being a shithole. Even though Tish says that the crime is down like what 10-12% in the Bronx, we all dispute that. You know, and considering the we'll talk about it in a few. The retired sergeant's son was just killed in the Bronx, right? I think she has more, there are more issues she should worry about rather than this. But again, we told you this was coming.
Yeah, I mean, and so what the argument coming out of the NYPD, out of younger Gen X or Gen Z cops, excuse me, out of the younger generation is that no, you could actually train around this. We are trained. The academy has put out training, and like so, my words are consistently getting minced up because what I always say is that since Eric Gardner, there has been zero training on how to get someone off their feet. Right? We don't know how to take anyone down because obviously the most natural form of taking someone down is from their head, right? You could tackle someone. Absolutely. You could tackle them. Is it really smart that you want to do that as an NYPD cop and go on the ground? Maybe not, especially if you end up on the bottom, right? Especially if you end up on the bottom during that takedown. So, and then immediately, if you look at takedowns, like Eric's very well versed in takedowns. If you look at the takedown, Eric, what's the next thing you're doing? You take me down. What is your next move? You don't just grab my hands. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
Chest to chest. Absolutely.
You're going to mount me.
There's no doubt about it.
You're going to sit on my stomach. You're going to sit on my diaphragm. You're going to put your chest on top of my chest. You're going to put pressure on my diaphragm. And that was the argument saying, well, that's not pressure. It's not sitting, standing, or kneeling. And I'm like, no, that is actually sitting, standing, and kneeling. That is putting pressure on your chest. Right here, it says it's a misdemeanor. Just because you've been lucky enough to not be in a politically charged situation where a DA doesn't want to charge you with it is the only reason you haven't been charged with it. There is no training in the NYPD on how to take somebody to the ground. It hasn't happened since Eric Gardner. And then they put this law in effect, and the only training that happened after a result of this, and I played the video. It's all over my social media. We've played it on here before. I'm not going to play it again. It starts with the suspect on the ground with his hands behind his back. And it only tells you you can't kneel, you can't sit, and you see the guy that's giving the training, the detective in the training unit at the time. He's mortified. It's like I want to be like, it's one of those videos where you like blink twice if you're you're captured. Like 100%. Like he didn't agree with any of it. No one agreed with any of it. Monahan said, "We can't be afraid. We can't be afraid." And then he spoke to the DA, and nobody was going to charge this. Yet here we are, 2026. Real foresight here from politically appointed compliance managers of the NYPD. It's literally unbelievable. And it's unbelievable that anyone's going to try to rationalize how you won't be charged with this. The only reason you haven't been charged with this till today is you just haven't been in the right incident. When the right incident comes along and somebody wants to demonize the NYPD, or they want to stir up community outrage to stir votes, how somehow they're going to protect this, you are not only going to get arrested, you're going to lose your job, and you're going to go to jail. And honestly, they could use this, and they could use this if they find you guilty of this. They could actually use this if it resulted in a death. They could use this to find you guilty of manslaughter. They could use finding you guilty of this to say you knew you weren't supposed to do that. You violated this law, and because you violated that law, they died as a result. Manslaughter, even if that didn't cause the death.
Yeah, it's spot on. It's just it has been politically charged at this point. I always said I could see this as a secondary crime. For instance, in most cases, if someone stabs someone, God forbid, right? Rhetorically speaking, someone stabs another, what happens? They also get charged with possession of with an illegal weapon, right? A concealed weapon. So, and the same thing could happen here. Let's say someone is in a situation with someone who's emotionally disturbed, but there's some type of confrontation, and that person dies. That may be the secondary charge, also, right? Using the diaphragm law, manslaughter, and then the secondary charge is the diaphragm law. But this idea where the unions were like, don't worry about it. That's what I heard from the LBA. And we heard from Terrence Monahan and other leadership of the NYPD. Don't worry about it. Don't pay attention to that. How could you not worry about it? This idea of let's navigate and figure out how to go around instead of let's face it head on and let's test the legislators on this and tell them and show them and fight back and say, we can't do this job. How do you want us to keep the city safe but we can't put people in handcuffs? And our only the byproduct is much more brutal than what you wanted. You wanted to keep the potential perpetrators safe. You want to keep everyone safe, but the byproduct is actually to use more brutal force, right? Because if you're actually doing the job, according to John and Marlon, and this is my firm belief, if you actually follow this law, the diaphragm law, then every encounter with someone who's actually resisting should result in brutal strikes, because that's the only way you can get someone in handcuffs if they're fighting, if they're not complying without putting pressure to the chest or to the back. Because as I said before, anyone who trains knows to get someone pinned when they're on the ground, you need to pin their hips and their shoulders. And how do you pin their hips to their shoulders, right? Almost like a seatbelt, just like with the Eric Garner thing, right? You pin someone's hip to their shoulder in a seatbelt way by putting either chest to chest, by putting your knee over their belly or their sternum, by putting pressure in those areas. But the reality is what they want doesn't work. And people are left to brutal strikes. And I think that, which is far worse than using chest to chest compression.
Yeah, yeah. I also think a lot of these, these takedowns eventually evolve into like a pylon, and in that pylon, you're inadvertently violating the diaphragm law. And if it doesn't become a pylon, if it's just one cop, two cops, it devolves into a wrestling match on the floor. In which case, I think you're gonna inadvertently violate the diaphragm law, and God help you if somebody happens to have a heart attack or whatever during that incident. I could again see them, some DA out there looking to use that against you as well. Which goes back to the problem that you really can't train around such a law. That law itself needs to be removed or updated or modified in some way. But yeah, I just do not think it's possible at all to train around it, because again, you're gonna have to restrain people, and you cannot meaningfully restrain them without putting that pressure on it. And there has to be that leeway for cops to do it, and there has to be leeway for stops that turn into wrestling matches.
Yeah, and then but the other thing, like the last thing I got on this is like everyone says, well, cops shouldn't do anything then. And like that, first of all, it's not even plausible that they could not do anything, because you clearly saw we opened this segment by showing you two cops standing there on a foot post, not bothering anybody, and boom, it comes right into them, right? And so there's nothing you could do. You're going to run into situations where there's going to be maniacs. They're going to try to kill you. They're going to try to kill others. And I know most of you are not advocating that cops should not do nothing. I think you're just frustrated and you say that. But one, that's the greatest case for defunding the police and getting rid of the police altogether and giving it all to these civilian non-for-profits who are going to be the new police, there's going to be zero oversight for, zero transparency with. So I don't think like you understand what you're advocating for, like when you say that. But the other thing is like, you're saying that cops can't even keep themselves safe. What are they supposed to do? What are you supposed to do? You're standing on a street corner, you turn around, boom, boom, boom. There's a gang shooting. They're not supposed to do anything. They're supposed to run the other direction. They perp turn, start shooting at you, run the other direction. So saying cops shouldn't do anything is not reasonable. It's not a solution. It actually will make the situations worse. What should happen is us as citizens should be advocating to our elected officials like we've been doing here on this podcast. We're the only people that speak out against the diaphragm law. The only people that have started to talk about it, it's only because it's so hard to ignore when we're consistently out here talking about it. You know what I mean? Same thing with the protest settlement agreement. We are the only people truly advocating for law enforcement. Fuck everybody else. Honestly, they're all full of shit, dude. Honestly, I'm telling you right now, every other platform here, I will go through the thing. And I see Leo Fiappiani saying what a great CO McIntosh was, and he's competent, and it's just the job needs media training. I'm going to sit there and say, bull fucking shit, because I never heard McIntosh's name once. You know what? And there has been dire things that have been happened in law enforcement, so he didn't look out for his cops. How many employees of his were forced out of their career during the vaccine mandate? How many employees of his weren't promoted, and people that didn't deserve were promoted because of DEI? Don't tell me he stood up. Don't tell me he stood up. Don't tell me that he's competent. Don't tell me that he cares about his cops. Don't tell me that he protects his cops, because I don't see anyone in the fucking NYPD doing that. That's in any form of higher up leadership. So, and like I said, anything comes down in the future, you know what McIntosh is going to do? What he's been doing, what the rest of these fucking cowards do, is he's going to shut his mouth and say, it's coming from City Hall. It's coming from City Hall. You know, there's nothing I could do. You know, I just got to have him sleep with my wife on our wedding night. I just got to give up my firstborn kid. I just got to stick myself with things that I don't want or need that are potentially harmful to me. You just got to do it because City Hall said so. That is who rises to the rank, and that's why he rose to the rank. Yeah, he sucks. He's a mushmouth. Does the job need media training? Absolutely. But you don't need media training when you're a fucking 2-star chief. You need media training when you're a police officer. You need media training when you're a sergeant. When by the time you're a 2-star chief, if you're not competent in media training, if you're not competent in your ability to speak and communicate, you're not a fucking good cop. So don't, and like, we're talking about all this shit. Diaphragm law, what do you say about it? Nothing. You know, like the protest settlement agreement. Did he come out and talk about it? No, none of them did. None of them did. You know, and I love it. I love the Mondani derangement syndrome that's going on, because all of the problems of the world, all of the problems in the NYPD, and all of the problems in New York City now came as a result of Zohran Mondani. Get the fuck out of here. Seriously. Mondani is just another fucking Democrat, like Eric Adams, like Bill de Blasio. The fucking chief of department now sucks like the chief of department before him, like the chief of department before him, like the chief of department before him. The police commissioner sucks like the police commissioner before him, and the police commissioner before him, and the police commissioner before him. This is the problem, is people don't want to talk about what's happened here, and they don't want to point out the actual problems. Everybody wants to pretend now, oh yeah, if we get Mondani out of there, everything's going to change overnight. Nothing's going to change overnight. There are thousands of Zohran Mondanis across this country. There are hundreds of them in elected office now across New York State and in New York City. Zohran Mondani is just another Democrat. Nothing is fixing this. Like, nothing is fixing this if we don't hone in on the problems, and we don't hold the leadership, the appointed management, and their elected masters accountable. If we're not going to hold the feet to the fire and call out the bullshit, everything is going to continue to get worse, like we told you it was gonna. You know, everyone wants to reinvent Andrew Cuomo all of a sudden, like he's the fucking savior. I know, if we would have just got Cuomo in. There wasn't enough votes, obviously. He was never fucking winning, nor should he have. He was the most radical, incompetent governor ever. He should be in fucking jail. So I don't give a shit that he's on the radio station. You want to play nice now, and he wants to pretend like he's a moderate. He was a fucking left-wing radical nut that emasculated the NYPD and put in laws to embolden criminals and embolden illegals. And the results of your dealing with are the things that you're dealing with in New York City are more of a result of Andrew Cuomo currently than they are of Zohran Mondani. So I'm sick of the bullshit. I'm sick of not calling out the bullshit. It's unbelievable. Like, no, we're going to hold every single person accountable on here. And we do that not because we're ranting and raving like all of you want to say. What we're doing is we're waking the public up, and we're telling them the truth. Unlike fucking Fox News, unlike Newsmax, unlike all of them who want to now reinvent Andrew Cuomo, want to reinvent Eric Adams, and want to somehow pretend that they're moderate, common sense public safety advocates when they're fucking not.
It's getting hot in here, brother. You know, this proves my point. I said early on, I guarantee after we were critical of Mushmouth McIntosh, that people would say he's a nice guy. And sure enough, someone came to his defense saying, oh, he backed this up. Well, that's great. What does that look like? What does that look like in your world? He gave you a day off when you needed it? I mean, is that really backing you up?
Eric, would he back you up with your CCRBs or your charges?
I never heard from McIntosh.
Would he come out and put himself on the front line for you?
No, I never heard from Mushmouth McIntosh. I never heard from him fight for the cops with the vaccine mandate. I never heard him stand up for the women that couldn't breastfeed couldn't find a place to breastfeed in a precinct. I never heard him stand up for anything. I never heard him stand up for the cops that were eradicated by the Civilian Complaint Review Board, like myself. I never heard him say I should have been promoted to captain. I never heard a word. I never heard him say, you know what, John and Eric, did you get that phone call from McIntosh? I'm sorry that you're being harassed and that your family's being threatened by a sergeant in the NYPD. I'm sorry that they're trying to decertify you. I'm sorry that they terminated you, Marlon. I never heard it, but he's a nice guy. Everyone's a nice guy. This job, the NYPD suffers from the Stockholm Syndrome. God forbid. I always find that when we say something critical about someone, right away they come to his defense. The same people that are in the locker rooms right now talking about McIntosh. You know what I'm talking about? They're in the, oh, that guy's an idiot, man. I can't believe he doesn't even know what happened. But as soon as we say a bad word, they come to his defense. Oh, he's such a nice guy. Everyone's a nice guy in the NYPD. They all suffer from the Stockholm Syndrome. And they want to protect the same people that they talk about, the same people that they're angry with, the same people that they know don't stand up for them. What does that look like? I mean, if people get credit just because they gave you a day off, what does that look like? Someone supporting you and stand up for you? It's absolutely ridiculous. So they don't like what we say. Too bad. Turn the channel off if you don't like it. But you know what we're saying is absolutely the truth. It's the same stuff. People, what they say in the locker room is what we're saying out loud. The difference is once we say it out loud, the same people in the locker room that say it now want to come to their defense because they suffer from the Stockholm Syndrome. Let's be critical. If you actually want the NYPD to get better and change and give you a better product and serve the city, then we actually have to have critical response and critical arguments and discussions to actually make it better. But until then, like I said, you say one, we can pick a name right now, and you criticize that person, the NYPD, everyone's going to come to their defense, and he's a nice guy. The NYPD apparently has the nicest guys in the entire world. The NYPD is like just a bunch of humanitarians.
Yeah.
They're all competent. They just can't speak and they can't keep their dick in their pants. But fucking, and they can't not sexually harass fucking all their employees. That you know, and they don't know shit about their job, but they're all competent. You know.
Yeah, it's a nice guy syndrome, you know. And the thing is, we talk about the job needing to train guys better, but I mean, if you're gonna wait around for the job to give you the resources you need or to train you, then I'm sorry, you're not gonna get very far, you know, career wise. You know, at certain points you got to do things for yourself, especially if you're an assistant chief making $250,000 a year. You got enough to afford a speaking coach, or you know, you can make time in your office to brush up on your speaking skills. You know, it ain't that complicated. You know, but you know, just to show you how much of Stockholm syndrome the job is in, and maybe society is in at large. I'm gonna bring this up quickly, John. Look, this is one of the comments that we got to this post that John put up about the law as it pertains to harassment and OGA, right? This is one of the response. He says, I know the retired guys, but if it was me, it's a lot easier said than done. The department has to stop putting them on fixed posts. That was his response to it. Stop putting guys on fixed posts. That's your answer to dealing with cops getting harassed by social media influencers looking for clickbait, right? The entire job is in Stockholm syndrome, you know, and I think society is too. But the answer is not to, you know, just you know go back in your shell and become docile, and you know, it's not that complicated. You know, it really ain't that complicated. You just gotta, you know, in the case of Macintosh, you're gonna have to do things on your own in order to improve yourself and improve your you know, certainly help your career uh go forward, because at this point it's not about how many arrests you make or your investigative work. Okay, you're a chief. yeah, most of what you do is involves public speaking. So
Yeah, no, it's wild, dude. You know, and you know, like that's the thing. People just don't want to recognize reality of what's happening. I just saw this actually too. Phil Wong just put this out too. Democrat at a New York City Council, and he's acknowledging it. This video is absolutely appalling and unacceptable. First, this trend of wannabe influencers harassing police officers for clicks, views, or lawsuits has to end. Exactly. So when people are sitting here and saying we're ranting and raving about nothing, this is exactly what we're doing. We're advocating to our elected officials to do something about this. We're bringing awareness. We're informing people. We're not sitting there going, yeah, when I was a cop, I would have took my nightstick and cracked his head open. No, we're saying this has to end and there has to be competent responses to it, a careful, weighted responses in today's environment. We're not saying we're not advocating for police brutality. We're advocating for a safe society that believes in criminal justice, believes in public safety, common sense. If you don't want this to happen to you, if you don't want this to happen to your children, if you don't want this to happen to your mother, how could we accept it happening to police officers? So, and then just another example of it is again, like I said, everything is the Mondani derangement syndrome. Everything is the fault of Zohran Mondani, yet somehow the media is telling us that a billionaire heiress is the best cop since Teddy Roosevelt. And even though she was never a cop, doesn't understand the job, has done more than questionable things, and continues to get up on that microphone and tell us things that are not accurate, and literally keep information from us. But all of a sudden, Jessica Tisch became the best police commissioner ever. She's making history across New York City. But the reality is she's not making history across New York City. And everything that was happening under Eric Adams and that started under Bill de Blasio is continuing to happen and continuing to get worse. And this is just an example of it. We were told that you were going to split the Bronx in half, and you were going to get 200 more cops into the Bronx, and shootings are down, and they made history last year in the Bronx, and they're going to make history again this year in the Bronx. And you have a 12-year-old kid riding his bike in a bodega, and he gets shot in his chest by a stray bullet due to gang violence. Yet we're told shootings are down, murders are down. And literally no one believes it. Yesterday, the Dominican parade in the Bronx took off. It was a complete shit show. I don't have all the videos up. I looked across all of the internet. It was an absolute shit show. I was like, holy shit. I don't even know what's going to happen this year at Labor Day. I have no idea. The Bronx was out of control last night. The NYPD had no plans how to use it. They had no plans to what they were going to do. Completely mismanaged. I was like, they don't know what they're doing. Like, they have civilians running it, and they have moron uniforms that they've empowered that are just doing the dumbest shit and have no idea. They literally, I guess they weren't around, or they just thought everything that we did in the past was stupid because they completely went away from it. But here you have Bronx split in half. Where are the 200 fucking more cops? How does a 12-year-old kid riding his bike to the store right next to a woman with a baby stroller, fucking bullets go off, this kid loses his life, a retired NYPD sergeant, detective sergeant from a detective squad, I believe in the 4-4, loses his life unnecessarily. Yet we're going to sit here and we're going to see a press conference from Zohran Mondani telling us that we're at historic lows with Jessica Tisch standing right beside him. And then you're going to have that fucking retard, what's his name? Sid Rosenberg, the guy that looks like a burnt raisin. He's going to come out and be like, Jessica Tisch is the best. If it wasn't for her, the city would collapse. I'm so glad she's there, but he's a fucking terrorist. Well, guess what? Your friend's working for a terrorist then, isn't she? Isn't she? And how did this happen if everything that's happening, everything that we're being told is true? How did this happen? How did it happen? And then you got Vanessa Gibson. You know who she thanked? She thanked all the violence interrupter groups for coming out, because you know what they did? Do you know what they did? They showed up after and they held the vigil. And then the next day they held the press conference. Well, guess what? I got news for you, Vanessa. I got news for you. They don't make hundreds of millions of dollars. We don't spend hundreds of millions of dollars for them to do a fucking vigil. We don't have hundreds of millions of dollars spent for violence interrupters to give a fucking press conference the next day. They're there to prevent these things. And clearly they're not fucking preventing them. Clearly, they're not trained professionals to deal with trauma, to console the family. So why are they there? They're not out on the streets stopping these things from happening. They're not medical professionals. They're not psychological professionals. They're not public safety professionals. What are we paying them for? What are you thanking them for? They're doing absolutely nothing. And nearly every single person that loses their life is a result of it. And when you look at most of those violence interrupter groups that you named, there's been a lot of things that happened in there, namely arrests that have been made that involved arrest of illegal firearms and drug use, which emboldens this type of behavior. So this is the problem here, people. No one understands the political structure. It's Mondani's fault. No, it's everybody's fault. It's all your fault. It's all our fault.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I'm definitely tired of the elites and the media trying to prop up Jessica Tisch as the savior commissioner. We haven't seen any change. As far as I'm concerned, we still have the same amount of corruption we did in the Eric Adams administration under Jessica Tisch. She didn't eradicate the corruption. She just rebranded it. She is the queen of rebrand. She does a great job of rebranding it. And I'm also most disappointed with the Jellyfish chief of department, Michael Petrie. Why? Because he knows damn well what's necessary to do good police work. But the fact that he falls in line shows you the Jellyfish appointed managers that we have in the NYPD that are willing to fall in line with everything that is in opposition of doing good law enforcement, good police work. So how is the rank and file supposed to put out a good product when they have no support and they have weak leadership pandering to politicians and legislations that want to put out an inept police force? And the answer to this is the violence interrupters. What are violence interrupters? I don't know what their job is, but I would just think in the actual definition, it means to interrupt violence. So what violence did they interrupt when a 12-year-old lost their life? And if we're not giving out proper information and we're not documenting every trigger pull, which I often talk about, which we're not doing, we're not putting every shots fired. How do we protect a 12-year-old? Because I'd like to know how many shots were fired in that area in the past several months that were not documented. How many shots were fired by potential gangs there that didn't strike anyone? Were they documented? And if so, who's investigating it? What were they classified as? Because clearly we didn't do a good job to prevent a 12-year-old getting killed by gunfire from rival gangs. That is one thing that was so honed in on by anti-crime, which is why we need to bring anti-crime back again, because we have people getting shot out there. And we were told that the Bronx is so successful that we had to split up into two boroughs that would give us more cops and actually help the Bronx even more. Well, it was split into two boroughs to say we need more time. Well, it was split into two boroughs, and yet we still had a 12-year-old killed by gunfire. So I'm tired of hearing how Jessica Tisch is the ultimate savior, right? And clearly she's been propped up so she could be the next mayor or some type of political force out in New York. But she is the queen of rebrand. We just rename the things. We gaslight the public, lie to them, but your eyes are not playing tricks on you. What you see right there is what's not matching to their crime sets. Times Square is out of control. So is Central Park. And so are the neighborhoods that are known for violence in New York City, which need they need intrusive policing by the NYPD. It's not happening. It's not happening. And I don't think every trigger is getting documented. Clearly, how did a 12-year-old get shot? I would like to know what happened in that area in several months. What shots were fired where no one was actually struck? Were they documented? I would say most likely not.
Yeah, and what are the violence interrupters gonna do to prevent this from happening again? Nothing. These politicians, it's the usual story. Rinse and repeat. They, a young kid gets killed in a horrific incident that didn't have to happen. They'll make noise about it for a week or two, and then it'll be lost amongst the other young people who've died needlessly in places like the South Bronx. Rinse and repeat. It's gonna happen again too, because again they don't want to really solve the problem. Okay, it's all theater, and it's theater to keep you in line and voting for them again and again. And when it comes down to it, they're not going to do the things that need to be done to solve these problems. Because if they actually cared about solving the problems, they would have been screaming at the top of their lungs about cops and about needing more cops in those areas, needing more cops in the NYPD, and doing what we can to keep cops from leaving. Okay, meaning from keep cops wanting to come to work and being productive and becoming the best cops they can be. And what do we keep seeing? Them putting roadblocks in the way of you being productive and being able to do your job. Like again, the diaphragm law. So these guys don't care, and it's sad. It really is, But give it a month, give it 2 weeks, you know.
No, dude, it's infuriating, bro. Because like I don't know what happened on the radio yesterday in the Dominican Day Parade, but just watching those videos, I guarantee they were understaffed. It highlighted every single thing we talk about on here. They were understaffed and they were led by absolute morons who don't know the job, don't care about the job, and have more ego than they do experience or intelligence. And I'm like, I could only imagine what happened yesterday because and again, we don't even know all the shit that happened there yesterday. And the night prior to that, the Bronx was on fire, which is the day this kid gets killed. And like no one wants to talk about it. We're propping Jessica Tish up, saying everything's historic, everything's great, the NYPD is great, everything's fine. And what are you doing as a result of that? At the same time, the media has this Mondani derangement syndrome, just like they had for the Trump derangement syndrome, and they're focusing on Mondani, but they're not focusing on the issues. So you're focusing on all this bullshit, and you're missing the point. You're missing the point. You're not honing down on we don't have enough cops. The NYPD is lying to you about crime numbers. And so what happens? Mondani and all of the Democrats, what do they continue to do? They continue to put more legislation in place, which will give you less cops, which will bring your quality of life down, which will lead to more innocent people dying on New York streets or being injured unnecessarily or being victimized unnecessarily. And we never talk about it because we don't get on the issues. This is the only channel that talks about the issues. I look, it hasn't fell on me. Like, why do you think I no longer go on Fox? I no longer get invited on Fox. I no longer get invited on Newsmax. I no longer you never see the Post quote me anymore. You never see the Daily News quote me anymore. Why? Because we're fucking telling the truth and they're not. That's why. That is the exact, we're the only people honing in on these issues. All of these other fucking fake, phony guys, I support the police, they're all full of shit. They wouldn't sit down here with us for a second because they would get eaten alive by the truth. Not by us putting them in the corner. The truth would come back. They wouldn't even, because they wouldn't be able to speak it. That's the problem. Everything we're saying is absolutely accurate. And the media has a great way of enraging everyone and no one's seeing what's in front of their own face. What was I saying? It's a 3-card Mondani. You get Cuomo, you get Adams, you get Mondani, you get the same fucking guy. You got to vote differently. You got to change it. Like with New York voters, it's like Einstein's definition of insanity. They continue to do the same thing over and over and over again, and yet they expect a different result. And then they repackage and try to retread Andrew Cuomo or an Eric Adams and make them people that they're not. This comes out in the Post. Thousands of 9/11 families demand Mondani be banned from the 25th anniversary ceremony. Stay away. I'll tell you right now. I got no problem with it. But how come you didn't do that for Bill de Blasio and Eric Adams? Oh, look, he's sitting there with one of the masterminds or whatever they want to call this imam. I forget how they package him, but supposedly this guy was somehow tied to the 9/11 terrorists, right? I don't know what that connection is because I won't even look at it because when I started seeing this pop up, I said, okay, fair enough. But then why doesn't that same standard hold to Eric Adams? Because here he is giving this same fucking guy an award. And yet he's on Fox News telling us about all this shit. And then you got Sid Rosenberg all over Fox News. Mondani's a terrorist. He's a jihadist sympathizer. He's this, he's that. Oh, but Jessica Tish is great. His police department's doing great. And then they do great work. It's like, time out. If you believe that, why don't the standards apply? If Mondani can't go to the 9/11 museum, and I got no problem with it, by the way. I got no problem with it. 9/11 families want to turn their back on it, that he's hanging out with Hassan Piker, and Hassan Piker on his wall is basically celebrating the biggest mass murder in American history. It's basically celebrating it. I got no problem with you not wanting Mondani there. But how the fuck do you want this scumbag there? How do you sit there and say, oh, you know what, Eric Adams, he kind of, they didn't go after him because he was a corrupt fuck. They went after him politically because he spoke out about Biden. Are you fucking stupid or what? Seriously, the most corrupt mayor in New York City history, they went after him. So Donald Trump's original DOJ, when Donald Trump was in the first time, they went after him because he spoke out about Joe Biden, because that's when the investigation started. And the investigation further, and we sat there and we told you all the things that were happening. And guess what? Everybody said we were crazy. Everybody said we were nuts. Everybody said we were vindictive towards Eric Adams. We didn't know what we were talking about. It was the best version of the NYPD ever. Crime was down. All these things. Everybody still wanted to take the job. Every little thing we told you, it all came out, and everyone around him got indicted, and everybody around him's pleading guilty or going to jail. And yet you want me to believe that because he said he said nothing about Joe Biden. He cried for more money from the federal government so he could give crumbs to his friends. I mean, like, this is ridiculous, dude. And it's the same thing when I look at this young kid. I don't want to politicize any death of anybody, especially a cop's son. But I'm watching everyone politicize it, putting it on Mamdani, and then you got the left thanking while they're spending billions of your money to give to these groups that do absolutely fucking nothing to prevent it when they're supposed to.
Yeah. Listen, I think that for some reason people have hyper focused on Zohran Mamdani as being like the ultimate extremist for New York City, especially being in power and being the mayor. But I don't think people want to highlight and realize that Eric Adams and former Mayor Bill de Blasio were exactly the same. The only difference is the name Zohran Mamdani, I think, is easier to kind of correlate to extremists because of his name. But Eric Adams and former Mayor Bill de Blasio were no difference. De Blasio fooled you by giving you an Italian name, and Eric Adams fooled you by saying he was a cop. But both of them are the same as Zohran Mamdani. There's no difference. The only difference is Zohran Mamdani has a name that I think people can just kind of more associate with extremism. But what difference did you really get? And now going back to what we were talking about, I want to go back to talking about the 12-year-old getting shot. Tabitha Foster, how you doing, Tabitha? A good friend to the podcast, who was a cop herself. I'm surprised she said don't bring back anti-crime. That I don't understand. I think anti-crime was a fantastic tool for the NYPD. I think it bred the best cops on the job. Those cops go on to detective squads and learn how to do investigations. And so for most people know what anti-crime is. For anyone, if you're a police enthusiast, if you don't know about law enforcement, anti-crime was cops working in plainclothes, and sometimes refers to jump out boys. But there was a lot more to just jumping out and grabbing people. Those cops did preliminary investigations, studied their crime trends, knew everything about the gang members, knew every gang member. I mean, there were sometimes myself and my teams, these guys could just regurgitate every name that's in a gang and their rivalries and who their families are. This is what anti-crime did. They studied and knew their information. And when they went out there with a purpose and out there with a mission. I think anti-crime is a fantastic tool that was disbanded June 15, 2020. I think it should come back. Do we have the cops for it and the leadership right now? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But if we could get the proper training and the cops, anti-crime was a fantastic tool. Would stop shootings. Did it still happen? Yes. But anti-crime was the best tool and the best chance you have of preventing a 12-year-old from getting shot by gang fire. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, even if we don't have the personnel to train, the job could hire some retired guys to impart their wisdom on these young guys. Okay, it's not that hard. I'm not advocating for us. Okay, I'm just saying, you don't have the experience in the precincts. Okay, you hire for every other sort of bullshit job in the city. That's unnecessary. We pay people hundreds of thousands of dollars for no-show jobs. Okay, and for bullshit jobs that shouldn't exist. Okay, so it's not that hard. Now, just to go back to the article that John posted, that if everybody cares about Mamdani, not true, they don't want Mamdani to show up at 9/11, right? Okay, so we now care about 9/11, right? Right? So they're gonna speak up about this, right? They're gonna speak up about the city wanting to dismiss the foil about them having knowledge of the air quality around 9/11, right? Right? If you've been watching us, we talked about this like months ago when we first found out about it, when the article first dropped in around February of 2026, right? Basically, documents were uncovered that hadn't been known about the air quality during post 9/11, that the city knew about it and that they anticipated long-term lawsuits regarding the air quality, right? So now in 2026, the city is trying to dismiss those new lawsuits. Okay, so if everyone suddenly cares, if you have the media networks, the mainstream media, the Fox News, all these pundits all of a sudden care about Mamdani showing up at 9/11, then why are they so silent on things like this that really matter? Why are they so silent? Why are the unions silent about this? Why are the other politicians in the city, everyone silent about this? It goes back to what I keep saying time and time again, that what you're seeing is more WWE. Okay, you're seeing the heels versus the baby faces, and it's all theater. It's all kayfabe, guys. Because at the end of the day, these people all are partying together, just like the DC swamp. Okay, these people all party together, and they behind the scenes they're all laughing at you, while in front they're acting like they're really enemies. Okay, when they're not, and they don't really care about the concerns of me and you. Okay, and by the way, some of you retired guys, you know, you're always bringing up when your fellow coworkers have passed away. Uh, you know, we see it many times. Okay, this is still weighing on you. You think about it. So why aren't you bringing these issues up with your unions? Okay, why isn't the unions being very vocal about these concerns? The city, there are documents stating that the city knew the air quality was dirty. Okay, and you're still silent about it, and your unions are still silent about it. Okay, you're not doing your colleagues who passed away from this a service by remaining silent on it.
Yeah, I mean that's it's unbelievable, dude. It's honestly, I really feel like here's the thing, and I'm gonna say it, and I know a lot of you guys are gonna get mad at me, and I don't care. I literally think people in law enforcement are the most uninformed population in the country. Like they're the most uninformed, and like the problem is because we were trained to follow orders. We're trained to like keep really have thick skin and not speak out about certain things. And I think it's to the detriment of not only this profession it's been, but the detriment to this country. Because I think police officers have a huge standing in this country and have a huge responsibility. And the weight of that oath isn't guaranteeing you a big pension, isn't guaranteeing you a 3/4 thing. And if that's what that oath meant to you, you're the exact wrong person for public service. You're no different than a politician. You're the and that's the problem. That's the problem I see across the political spectrum is we've gotten real people out of politics, and politicians are fake and phony, in my opinion, the overwhelming majority of them. We do get a lot of grassroots candidates on here. We try to show you them on both sides of the aisle, whether we agree or we don't agree, just because we think conversations are necessary. But I think the same's true in policing, especially in police and leadership in policing. You see that the truth has been devoid of that, and cops have now become politicians. Oh, I can't really touch on that because it's not right to talk about. And I'm not even talking about. Look, when you're in it, it's different. But when you're in charge, you have a responsibility. And guess what? You're already over 20 years. You already got a monster pension. Like you everything you're doing now is for personal gain. It's literally sending you straight to the depths of hell here on earth mentally, and then later in the afterlife. You're literally giving in and no longer performing your duty. You're harming the profession. You're harming the public. You're harming yourself by not telling the truth. But the people that are retired, the grifters who want the contracts, the grifters who want back in, those people, you're worse than the people that are in my opinion. You're worse because at least they can't see it from the outside. You are no longer part of that uninformed population. You are now the informed, and you're making a conscious decision to not say anything about what's happening in the city, in the profession, and yet you're going to wear your thin blue line flag. You're going to talk about how you love the police. You're going to honor all the dead cops, all the people who have been killed. And you're no different than any of these other grifters that are out here trying to make their name around dead cops and honor and all this other bullshit, but they're too scared to speak about anything that's happening in this profession that's affecting not only this profession, it's affecting quality of life and the safety throughout this country because of our inability to tell the truth. You swear an oath before God, and then you fucking lie every day.
Yeah, I think people have forgotten, or maybe they just don't care, that when you're in a position of political power, that you're actually in a position to serve the people, and the people are not supposed to serve you. And it's not about serving your needs. You know, I saw this thing one time. It was on social media. I think it's so true. And the guy was talking about how he was high up at some company. I think I mentioned before. He was high up at some company, and every time he flew with the company, they put him on first class. They gave him like all these like beautiful cups, like everything was so nice. And he said, the reality is that wasn't for me. That's for the person in that position. So when I'm not in that position, you know, he's like, I did something with that company in retirement. I didn't get the first class. I didn't get that fancy cup anymore because it wasn't for me. It was for that position. And that's what people understand, that the amenities that you get when you're in a political power is for that position, not for you. And the same thing goes for the upper management, the NYPD. The amenities that you get, it's not for you. It's not your playground to have fun because you, Jeffrey Madry, or you, John Shell, get whatever you want. No, it's because of the position. It's for the chief of the department. It's for that position, not for you. And that's what people don't understand.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
Did you mute yourself even in your car? He did it.
Yeah.
You were doing good, bro. You were doing good.
Every time.
Did you really?
No, I did. Look, every time I grab my coffee, it makes a noise. So I'm trying to. Yeah.
So you know what, Marlon? No coffee for you.
Yeah. I saw a couple comments there that I want to bring up. Nolan says that Marlon, you believe that retired NYPD MOS are listening to the unions, the NYPD unions, really? No, it's not about listening to the unions, Nolan. It's that a lot of retired guys still have contacts in the unions, right? We may be pariahs to the unions, but you know the unions will still listen to a lot of you. Okay, so what I'm saying is, all the guys, there's an entire generation of cops who've been affected by 9/11. The guys who were on scene after the building dropped, the guys who were there when the building dropped. You're that generation, okay? You see all your colleagues passing away from 9/11 illnesses. You now we have new information stating that there are documents that say that the city knew about the air quality, that it was bad. So you guys should be calling up the unions and putting pressure on them. Okay, our way of putting pressure on the unions is by bringing out these issues publicly on this show. Okay, but you guys who are in the background, who viewers who watch us, those of you who were retired, you should be picking up those phones and putting pressure on Scott Monroe and the other unions to do their damn job. Okay, because their job is to protect you. Okay.
Yeah, that whole thing, I love it. I get all these union cucks and all the other different unions, and they all have fake handles. And they're like, "Where's your boy Turco?" Blah, 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 all this shit, right? Like consistently, right? And I'm like, I'm like, you understand that I'm one of the only people that have called out Lou Turco, Chris Monahan, and the rest of them. Who was the other group? And Scott Monroe for saying that they wouldn't. For not saying that they wouldn't go along with allowing Mondani to dip into a pension fund. You understand that. And then you understand that we also called out the PBA and the SBA about it, because even though they said it, they were throwing little breadcrumbs out there. Well, hey, you know, if we could get a raise, maybe. So even though that they were saying it, like, it's not full of shit. We're just telling you, look, we've all told you on here, if we had to go back and do it differently, we'd be a lot more involved in the union. Be a lot more involved than we were. You know, I didn't understand it. I thought they had my best interest. By the time I realized they didn't give a shit about anybody but themselves, they were done. So where's Turco? I don't know. He's probably sniffing Zohran Mondani's balls somewhere, plotting a way to stay on for another 3 years so that he can make more money, and that and who cares? Who gives a shit about what happens to the pension down the road? Because, hey, I'm going to be 60 something anyway. What do I give a shit? You know what I mean? I'll get my big money and that's it. Just like the rest of the union had in their board. I'm sorry. Like there's a lot of shady shit that's happening. Nobody gives a shit. I woke up and was exposed to it. I don't want to put words in Marlon's mouth, but I believe Marlon too woke up and was exposed to it for the COVID when it came to the COVID mandates, how they were unwilling to fight for us, how they were unwilling to care about us. And I don't want to put words in Eric's mouth, but I'm sure the same thing when CCRB came after him. No, my unions will get me. And then you're like, wait a minute, what the fuck is happening here? And so we woke up to it. It was too late for us. We're informing you. Take back your union. Take it back.
Yeah. Good point. Good point. If there's one thing, I'm sorry, Eric.
No, go ahead, brother. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say quickly that if there's one thing I regret, it's I regretted waiting on the unions to do their job. Because I thought there's no way they're gonna go forward with this. I thought there's no way the union is gonna fight for this. I'm gonna get my date in the trial room, and I'm gonna show up with those documents. If I had to do it again, I would have sent first. I would have blasted that email to everybody on the job. And I would have started taking tours and going to every precinct and letting them know the problem and forcing the job to either let them suspend me or whatever, because it doesn't matter because they were going to go through with it anyway. So that's on me though. We back then we all thought the unions cared about us and had our backs, but history proved otherwise.
I agree. I mean, spot on. I thought the same thing, right? And the reason why we all believe that is because who are the unions? They're supposed to be fellow cops or fellow sergeants or fellow detectives or fellow lieutenants. These are people that you believe are the same as you. And then, unfortunately, so I believe the same thing. I believe that they were going to look out for us, that my money was going to a good place, and that we're all part of this team. And these guys are the voice for you, right? Because you can't speak out. These guys are going to talk to you, but you realize they're not cops anymore. They've been in the union for 20 some odd years. They're far removed from you. Same thing for the detectives, the sergeants, the lieutenants. They haven't done the police work. If anything, they've done police work, but they're not doing the same job as you. I talked about how the job changes generation to generation or by decade. So, comparing myself to Lou Turco, the last time he did the job, the responsibilities, accountability of a lieutenant were far different than it was for me. And so I realized it was far too late. I was targeted by the Civilian Complaint Review Board that I had to do everything in opposition to what the union told me to do. Because I believe today that what they were telling me to do would have led me to my demise, rhetorically speaking, not figuratively speaking. It would have been my demise in the NYPD. And I actually did everything the opposite. And to this day, I regret I had put my papers in while charges were still pending for retirement. And that's where CCRB actually, when they do their roundup, they found that I put my papers in, and that's where they offered me a deal to close out all my CCRB cases and take a 90-day penalty. I ended up agreeing on 64, but I regret it. I remember telling Lou, I think I'm just going to retire with the charges pending. I don't want to, it's almost like an admission of guilt. I want to fight these things in trial. If I don't I'd rather just go with the charges pending. I told you want the good guy letter and you want all this stuff. So I got a good guy letter, and the reality is I got a good guy letter that I could wipe my ass with, because my name is completely tainted as the most complained cop. So there's no law enforcement career for me, or even something in a private industry that is comparable to it. That's why I'm such an advocate to put awareness on the 58 for the guys that are out there right now, because it doesn't just affect you in your career, it affects you in life. So yes, I wanted to believe that the unions were guys like us, but they're not. They're far removed, and they're no longer cops. They're no longer guys that wear a shield. They're politicians, and they're in bed with the enemy. So yeah, unfortunately, that's the reality.
Yeah. All right. Before we wrap up, you guys got anything you want to bring up before we start to wrap up? We got a hard out at the 30 mark. Actually, Eric, if you got to run, dude, I know you got to run 10:30. Probably go like 5 minutes over.
You got it. I got about 5 more minutes. Sounds good.
All right. Yeah. We should be done quick. So anything else you guys want to bring up? Maul, you got anything?
No, I just want to shout out Sealy. Sealy just retired. Congratulations,
yeah,
Sealy. And I got to shout out Sealy because my first time at City Council, Sealy actually pushed me she actually basically pushed me in front of the mic because I really didn't want to do it. but I gotta thank her for doing that because it kind of inadvertently set me down this path to being here. Because after that, and after I went on there, John told me just come on the air, and here we are. So shout out to you, Silly, and enjoy retirement.
Oh, yeah, I want to reiterate that Celia, she's been on a lot of X Spaces with us. Awesome, Celia, enjoy retirement. You deserve it. Good people.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. True warrior. I love Sally. She was.
She's awesome.
Sally actually got her religious accommodation approved, and she never stopped fighting. Like, she didn't go silent into the good night. Like, she kept saying, "This is fucking bullshit. This is wrong." Like, even while she was active, even though she got a lot of heartache from it, from the job and from people on the job. So yeah, true warrior. Definitely look up to you, Sally. Always welcome on here. You want to come on. I'm sure people would love to hear your journey in the NYPD, your thoughts on things. So you got our numbers. Reach out. Whenever you're ready.
That's a good point to bring out. We often talk about masculinity and the masculine traits you need for the NYPD. Celia is exactly that. She's a woman, but she has those masculine traits. She's not afraid to stand up on the job. And that's not saying she's not feminine as a woman, but even men and women need those masculine traits to stand up and do what's right in the NYPD. So for you, shout out to you. You know what? Enjoy your retirement. We love you.
Yeah. Old school boss,
Yeah.
Old school.
Old school.
And not to make a man out of her, but she's got big balls. You know what I mean?
Exactly. That's what. Yeah.
And her workers love her. You know what I mean? So yeah. So
true.
True. So
you need balls to walk these halls.
Yeah.
Yep.
So yeah, awesome. So all right. Anything else? I thought you wanted to bring something up to the screen more.
Yes. Nah, you know what? Just continue, John. I'll bring that up at the end, just before we close out.
Okay. All right. So let's close out. I think we're kind of light on the super chats today, anyway. So let's do that, and then we'll run. We had about 600 people with us all morning. We appreciate you guys for being here. Obviously, it's a live interactive chat. We try to bring up as many comments as we can, but it's really hard to keep up with. So we appreciate all of you guys that are in here on YouTube. Again, if you're on Instagram, we don't see those comments. So if you want to come over to our YouTube channel at The Finest Unfiltered, we appreciate every single person that joins us. Biggest thing you could do to help us is like this show, share this show, subscribe to our channel, and then hit the hype button for us. Helps move us up in the algorithm. We're doing well with views. We're averaging a few million a month across YouTube on all platforms with our short content and long form content. Really trying to bring our long form content up to where our short form content is. So if you guys can help us, if you like what you're hearing, please do us a favor, like, share, subscribe. Hitting that like button really is important for us. And that goes for you guys and girls on audio as well. So appreciate all that. Let's get to the super chats real quick, and then we'll run out of here. Detective Nolan, he says, been there, done that. The NYPD unions have no interest in hearing from retired MOS, especially on the issues being discussed here. Here's the issue, though, Nolan. I think that, like, as retired members, we kind of have an obligation to be more involved with the union, I think. And the fact that they could make decisions that harm the overall, that could potentially harm the overall health of our pension system and our benefits in retirement, as well as our medical care, I think that we need to get a bigger voice in retirement. And so I think we need to start advocating for that, whether it's forming our own union or being involved in those unions as retired members. And I'm not talking about those cocks that, again, $100,000 job to sit there and blow the union president. I'm talking about actually advocate for the retired members as well as NYPD. What happened for years and years and years, what Patty Lynch did was sell out the unborn. And that caused a trend amongst all of the unions to sell out their unborn, meaning the people that weren't yet cops or weren't yet sergeants, and they did a lot of give backs to fund their own raises. And that got to the point where it literally made the job completely unattractable to everyone. So what the union is now doing going forward is they want to sell out the retirees. They want to make the job more attractive to new hires by doing that and funding those bargained things by selling out retirees. So I think it's incumbent on all of us to get a little bit more involved. So thanks for the super chat. We appreciate it.
Yeah, I was going to say thank you for the coffee and donuts, Nolan. You know, I think that's a great discussion, though. I think retirees should actually be running the union. I think if we turn the table and we put it on retirees, you get far different union. And those union board members make them have some appearances and have it actually run by retirees would change the whole nomenclature of it. I think that would be a far better picture than what we have now.
Yeah, and just for an example, this was the letter that I wrote to Turco. It's still sitting here because he's never given me a response. So this is how they feel about retired members of their union. Even though I'm a lifetime member, I've never gotten a response from the president. I'm gonna resend this actually right as soon as we get off, because I think that it's a travesty that I am a lifetime member of the Lieutenants Benevolent Association, and the president can't even have him or one of his fucking lackeys reach out to me. So, I mean, this is a joke. Are you going to support allowing Zohran Mamdani to delay our pension payment funds, or are you not? And if so, why on both of those issues? That's not a hard question. It's not a hard question. Deserves an answer. And for all you active guys and girls, if you're not reaching out to your union and you're not demanding an answer, yeah, we're going to see what they give us. We're going to see if we stay silent about it. Maybe they'll give us something good. That's not a fucking answer. Are you going to support it? Yes and no. I don't care what could they possibly give you that you would be willing to jeopardize the health of your pension in the future. What could they give you? How much money? How big of a raise could they give you? Because I'll tell you, it would have to be in the millions for me. I'd have to be like, okay, I got a $10 million contract a year. Okay. All right. Yeah. Then you could sell out those retirees and their pensions and their medical benefits, because I'm a selfish fuck and you guys are going to give me $10 million a year and I'm going to be able to sustain financial wealth. You're not getting that. So the answer for you is nothing. Right? They shouldn't be doing it. And the fact that these guys aren't answering the question tells you everything you need to know. And the guys that are answering the question are throwing out the crumbs that, hey, we could get something that might change our mind. That tells you everything you need to know. Mamdani already said he had the talks with them and they were all on fucking board.
Listen, I just want to say Nolan's right. But Nolan says here, John, you just made my point. You're right, but we can't allow it. We can't say it, just accept it and say, well, this is the way it always has been, and this is the way it should be, that retirees are just kind of treated like pests. Well, we could change that. John writes a letter, I write a letter, Marlon writes a letter, you write a letter. We should just bombard them with our voices and noise. And those noises are letters, and constantly calling them and asking questions and say retirees need to be in the know. Retirees need to be made important. Absolutely. So, Nolan, you make a great point, but we can't just accept it. With that being said, 2 hours and 30 minutes into it. I love this show. People often tell me, go get a life in retirement. This is a life. I love it. I enjoy this. This is everything for me. This is therapy. Listen, I'm right now healing from neck surgery, and I enjoy being here. So, Marlon, thanks for jumping in. I know you said you were going to take the day, and just to show you how everyone cares. And Marlon jumped in from his car. John's done it many times. I've done it. So I want to thank everyone. We appreciate it. We're here for you, and you're here for us, and we're doing this together. So thank you. Like, share, and subscribe. I got to run. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it. We'll see you Wednesday. Thanks, guys. Marlon, thanks, brother.
Safe travel, dude.
I'll see you.
There you go.
We'll talk to you later. All right. We got Pio Affronte, $1.99. He says, wishing everyone a safe week. Thank you, sir. Thanks for always being here. The finest 25. And, you know, everyone says that Chiefs, NYPD Chiefs former are cheap fucks, but Mike Marino isn't. See, look at him. He gave $20 to the podcast. We appreciate you, sir. Thanks a lot for being here. And thanks for always joining. Thanks for weighing in. Ron Layson actually made this for us, and he sent this. And on the back of it, it says that I don't want to word it wrong, but it says your perspective matters, right? And it does. And all of our perspective matter, whether we agree with each other or we don't. It matters, you know? So, I think that, I appreciate everyone that weighs in here, and whether you agree with us or you don't agree with us, because obviously there's going to be issues that we disagree on. I mean, that is life. We shouldn't all agree together. I mean, we wouldn't be able to grow if we did. So, I think, I appreciate everyone that's on here, even the people that don't traditionally agree with me, even Juju. So.
Yeah. Yep. Well said, John. I saw a 199 from the finest 25 as well. Thank you, at the finest. We appreciate that, and we appreciate your viewership as well.
Yeah. And Dan the Man New York, he's $20 to the podcast. Thank you, sir. He said, thanks for the podcast and for keeping it real. Yeah, I mean, that's it. I think, it ain't going to get any realer than this. And I think that is the significant difference between this platform and any other law enforcement platform is, look, we might not be right, but it's how we feel. So, you know what I mean? It's how we feel. And everybody has the option to come on here and debate and debunk anything that we've said. Anybody that could prove anything that we said false, we've made corrections in the past. I said, you know what? I said this. It was wrong. We'll do it. What we won't do is bow down to the threats of being sued because it's happened. Countless times. I don't even know how many times. Because if I said something, in my opinion based about you, and you threaten to sue me about that, my answer to you is take that lawsuit, file it, and shove it up your ass at the same time, because I'll literally get on the stand and testify exactly what I said, that I think you're fucking incompetent. I think you're an idiot. I think you should have been locked up, and I'll give all of the facts why. So if you want that type of heat, bring it, And so, that's one thing we're not going to do. We're not going to bow down and be intimidated. And many have tried, and it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So, and then what's happening this is today, right? July 27th.
Yeah. So this is being hosted by a couple of retired cops, guys. Now, if you can recall, Sarita was on this show as well. She gave a great interview, so you can go back and watch that interview. In fact, I think I'll post a rerun later on today about it. But anyway, this is being hosted in Floral Park today, and I'm gonna provide the link in the chat as well if you want to RSVP or to donate. It's for Sarita's campaign to unseat Tish James, and again, we all know about Tish James. We mentioned that numerous times, and all the BS that's going on from her, and how much she contributes to the continuous uh, 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 corruption that's going on in New York State, and how New York State is no longer competitive with other states. Okay, so we got to do what we can to get rid of Tish James. So if you can, and if you have time, just follow through on the link and donate or RSVP. So I
Yeah,
posted
absolutely.
the
I mean,
link in the chat right now.
Zareth is obviously the clear choice for Attorney General. I mean, and the Attorney General has so much power, the top chief law enforcement officer in the state, and Tish James, all of the corruption that you see coming out of all of the agencies, all of the political corruption you see coming out of the politicians and they're appointed, literally are happening because Tish James is turning a blind eye to all of it. Another thing, Tish James oversees the New York State Division of Human Rights. And so she had put out about 2 years prior to COVID, she had put out employers' responsibility as it relates to religious accommodations. And the NYPD violated every bit of that policy and the law tied to it that falls under equal opportunity law and First Amendment protections. Literally every single bit of it. I outlined it with Tish James's office, as well as the Department of Human Rights, where all the violations were. I filed a complaint to the Division of Human Rights, and I don't recommend anyone doing that, by the way, because they suck. Get an attorney. Don't do that. It excludes you from a lot of things when you do that. You have to seek other ramifications. Get an attorney, and they didn't tell you a lot of things. They literally came back, did not investigate any of my allegations, didn't investigate anything I say, and all they said is that the NYPD did not violate my religious rights or these religious accommodations because they accepted other people's. It's the very definition of discrimination. I have that on paper. I still can't believe they wrote it. I thought that was I thought that was my ticket to getting back into the NYPD. Turns out it's not, because it turns out that actually no one gives a shit that New York State and New York City violated those laws. Very few. I think the only people that talk about it is Joanne Areola, Phyllis Cirillo. Only people that talk about it. Curtis Lee would made it a pivotal point of his campaign. But other than that, I mean, I think we're being become lost to history, and things like that could happen. And I remember saying to my wife at the time, I said, wow, if they could just do this to me, and I know the law, could you imagine what they're doing to women who are actual victims of sexual harassment and physical things? Could you imagine how incompetent and unbelievably corrupt this office is? So I think, you get somebody in there and you hold them accountable. There is no doubt that Tish James should no longer be the Attorney General of New York. Saritha's got all the qualifications. She has all the background for it. She's got the right attitude. She's a mother. She's a competent individual. She's a wife. She's somebody that cares. Absolutely, you should be voting for Saritha for Attorney General. I mean, and a non-vote is a vote for Letitia James, by the way. So if you're not getting out there and voting, that means that you support what's happened this last decade on the Letitia James. It's been abysmal on every end, on the public safety front, on your rights as a landlord, as your right as a homeowner, your rights as a worker, your rights as a citizen. So, yeah, I just want to say shout out to Saritha.
Yep. Well said again, John. Yeah, let's do our part to set New York State on the road to recovery, and get rid of these idiots.
Yep.
So.
All right, we got a few more before we run. We got Pat Donahue. Always a good one. What does he got? He says, when will Scott Monroe and the DEA address the discovery of the city hidden documentation of the toxic air at Ground Zero? Well, I wouldn't even just put that on Scott. I would say, where are all the unions on that? Where are all of them? Including, I FDNY, I think I could give a little back. There's a lot of shady shit happening in the FDNY unions, by the way. I'll bring that up at a later part. I got sent some pretty crazy documents. Not going to get into that right now. But I think as a whole, as a collective for the police unions, this has been abysmal. Yet 9/11's right around the corner, 25th anniversary of it. And, I think everyone's going to pretend like they give a fuck, but do they really? Did he really? Are you gonna complain about? So I think that's been abysmal, and I think the same's true with those who were forced to take a shot and were injured from it. And there've been a lot of people, there've been a lot of deaths, and there's been a lot of injuries, and nobody wants to talk about it. And I think that's the other thing. And so when they sit there and say they care about the health and welfare of their members, I could really say bullshit every single time. And and for any politician and I do consider the unions politicians. I don't consider them cops any longer. I consider the upper echelon of the NYPD. I consider them politicians. I don't consider them cops or even elected officials or their appointed officials. I think they're all politicians, in my opinion. Just because I could say that they're doing a bad job, in my opinion, and it's my opinion, and I give all the reasons why I believe that, doesn't mean that I am attacking their character or their person. I'm definitely attacking their character and their competence. But I'm not saying that they're awful people, that they're terrible husbands or they're terrible fathers or they're terrible people. I'm saying they're terrible at their job. And until we get back to doing that, we could just expect a lot of things getting a lot worse. There's a lot of great people in the NYPD that suck and are terrible cops, terrible supervisors, terrible leaders. It's just the truth. It's not because I don't like anybody. It just has to do with it. It's just the truth. If I sucked at my job, I would hope you guys called me out. If I suck at doing this, I would hope you guys tell me I suck at it. I would hope Marlon get off and be like, wow, you suck. Eric say, you suck. Like, we're supposed to hold each other accountable. That's real love. Muted, Marlon.
I'm experiencing a lot of lag on my side here.
Yeah.
I guess Starlink is being Starlink. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, when Scott's gonna finally acknowledge this, Pat, in 2020, never. Okay. All right. He's gonna acknowledge it about around the same time that he's gonna acknowledge all those of us who were forced off their job due to the scamdemic, But it's incumbent on us and all of you guys watching this, both active and retired, to keep putting pressure on them to wake up. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Illustrate life. I was 9 on 9/11, and I'll never forget. I'm 34 now. I'm married with 4 kids. I took red, white, and blue yarn to school, and we made bracelets to pass around. Yeah, man, it was a crazy day, crazy absolute day. I was just turned 21 literally. So yeah, crazy times, you know. Yeah, and I think that although a lot of people haven't forgot, many people have forgot, and many people are exposing us to possibly another mass murder by giving us an incompetent public safety apparatus and weakening our law enforcement professionals across this country. And yeah, we're not going to stand for it. So that's it, peoples. Thanks everybody for being here. Maul, you got anything before we run? Before the stalling kicks you out?
No, guys. Thanks for joining us, everyone. You know, we always appreciate you spending your morning with us, and we ask that you remain safe and stay alert if you're on patrol. And for the rest of you guys, have a great day, and I'll see you on Wednesday.
All right, peoples. Find us Unfiltered. We will be back at you.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime, but nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?